What's up, metalheads? This is Death Metal Dave in your face here on MetalMessiahRadio.com. And man, I have a longtime friend of mine, of legendary guitarist, engineer, producer. Oh man, this dude is a legend for sure. Mr. James Murphy. What's up, James?
Hey, how's it going, man? Cool to catch up with you here today, Dave.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward. Since the Death tribute, and
Absolutely.
It was kind of
been a couple years. Yeah,
that was a little crazy, so it was hard to like have a conversation, if you will. And
yeah. Those events are always very hectic. There's a whole itinerary, and things that's got to happen.
Right. And everybody wanted a piece of you, so I was like, I can talk to him later, But the cool thing is a lot of people might not know this, but the first person I met when I moved from Alabama was Terry Butler, and I sought him out because of a friend of mine in the band Skeletal Earth. Well, the second person I met was Mr. Brian Kidd in Lakeland, and Brian Kidd introduced me to James Murphy at his guitar lesson. James Murphy said, "Yes, you can invite your friend," and I went and joined in, and that was the first time we met. And I think you were in
That's still. Right. Yeah, Brian Kidd was my guitar student, and he drug you along one day.
Yeah, man. Well, and so we've known each other since. So let me ask you this, if you don't mind. What started you at a young age to get into playing guitar? Was it your family? What inspired you?
I would say that my very first, hint of being intrigued with guitar was just my dad playing his acoustic guitar. My dad plays; he still plays. He was never professional or anything like that. He was a military guy, but he always played an acoustic guitar, and he was more the type of player that just sort of strummed and usually sang along. Most of the songs he knew had lyrics, and he would just do the strumming and singing thing.
Did he write his own stuff?
Nylon, huh?
Did he write his own stuff?
No. He did like old folk rock.
Oh, okay.
And old country.
Killer.
Things like Alice's Restaurant and Ring of Fire and stuff like that.
Old stuff. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So that, just seeing him play, and he had his guitar. Now, he was very protective of that guitar for some reason. It wasn't a very nice guitar, but it was his only guitar. And I was just a kid, and he was just like, this kid's going to mess with my guitar.
Right.
But once he realized that I started asking for my own guitar from about age 8. And I knew where he kept his guitar. So whenever he would leave the house, or whenever I got home from school or whatever, and I knew he wasn't, I knew when he got home, I would pull that thing out of that closet and play with it. I couldn't make the case that I was playing it, but I would, until about, age 11, maybe, or so, 12, he showed me a few chords and how to play a couple little melodies.
Cool.
And, and the melodies were, like, he showed me the opening chords to, like, Malagueña and stuff like that, and he showed me real stuff. I remember the very first melody, the very first thing he ever showed me how to play was the simplest melody you can imagine, and it was shaving a haircut. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
He taught me how to play that. I was like, whoa, I can play something.
Cool.
So I just got real intrigued by that. And he taught me all what we call the cowboy chords. The open position chords, D, G, C, all of that, E, A, A, D minor, and he taught me how to play some very simple little things. But I wouldn't really call that the start of me playing guitar, but that was the start of me learning a few things. But I used to have, like I said, I used to have to sneak it out of the closet.
Right.
The thing, though, that really got me fired up was, you've heard this you've heard this tale 1,000 times if you've heard it once, Dave, and it was Ace Frehley. Kiss.
Yeah.
And, I got into Kiss. I got into Kiss very young, but, I was into Kiss in the mid-'70s. I missed, I think I first got into Kiss about 1975. So they already had a couple albums out, and that's when I discovered them, and I just went nuts. I was just a massive Kiss fan from there. And
wow, that was pretty young too.
Yeah. Well, my dad took me to my very first concert, and it's the only time my dad ever took me to a concert. And trust me, he didn't care for Kiss one little bit. But he took me to see Kiss in 1979, and I'm so grateful for it because it was still the original lineup. They had never changed a member yet. They had never taken off the makeup yet. Now, granted, it was like, yeah, he had, they had never, changed a member or taken off their makeup or anything yet. It was their sort of disco record.
Gotcha.
I Was Made for Loving You, Dynasty.
Dynasty
tour, 1979. And we had just gotten back from living in Germany, which is where I really got bit by the Kiss bug. Me and my friend, Jimmy McGowan, my fifth and sixth grade buddy, Jimmy McGowan, used to just get together and play our Kiss records. And
what city did you live in over there? Military brat.
That first time that we lived in Germany was Heidelberg.
Mm.
Yeah, Heidelberg.
I lived in Frankfurt.
Later oh yeah, the second when I went back, it was Frankfurt when we moved back when I was a teenager, and I actually finished high school there, Frankfurt American High School.
Crazy.
And actually formed my first band there, and not actually. We actually lived in a small town about 45 minutes from Frankfurt called Butzbach, a little bit closer to Gießen. And Gießen is where I bought my first guitar that I ever bought with my own money. It's only the second guitar that I ever had. The first one that was actually playable and tunable. And did my first band there. But it goes back to Heidelberg when I was just a little kid when I really got into Kiss. And then right after we moved back to the States, my dad got stationed in Texas. And about one of the first things he did for me there was he bought the tickets to that. And I held on to those ticket stubs. I still have one of those stubs to this day. And the other stub, it's been several years ago now, maybe even longer. Maybe I'm not even sure how long it's been. But it was one of the benefit show for Curtis Deason of Nasty Savage.
Okay.
Because he had his brain tumor, and they were raising money and wanted things to sell. So I brought one of my two ticket stubs, which back in 1979, it was cool. It was embossed with a Kiss logo and everything, like literally embossed on it. And so they looked really cool. And it says 1979 Kiss, And
is that the one at the Crowbar?
Yeah, that benefit show for Curtis at the Crowbar. And I presented it to Curtis there, and he seemed to really enjoy that gift. And I said, hey man, this is yours, and I want you to do whatever you want to need to do it. If you think you can auction it and get some money, by all means do that. If you want to just keep it for your personal Kiss collection, do that too, man. Whatever you want to do. I've got another one. I had to, because my dad didn't care about keeping his ticket stuff, so I had kept both of them for years and years and years, and I still got the one. And Curtis Beeson presumably has the other one, unless he sold it on, which is perfectly fine. And in that case, whoever bought it has it. But there you go. It was Kiss. So it was Kiss, to answer your question. Yeah.
Awesome. And so in Texas, where did you live in Texas?
Oh, man. We lived in the armpit of Texas. The Panhandle, Amarillo.
Ah, okay. I lived in El Paso. I was an Army brat also, so.
Oh, okay. Right.
Moved all over.
Yeah. We lived in Amarillo. And for some reason, just the year and a half we were there, we moved 3 times. So I ended up going to 3 different junior high schools or middle schools. I don't even remember whether they were junior high or middle schools. I'm not even sure I know the difference anymore. But it was like three different people who were at the Alamo, like Crockett,
Gotcha.
Fannin, Fannin and some other guy that was at the Alamo. That was the name of the school, and so we were all over the place. But he took me to see Kiss in Amarillo, Texas, in 1979. I believe it was in December. I think when he bought the tickets well in advance. I think I was 11 when he bought the tickets, but I had turned 12 by the time the show came up. But he didn't care for it, but he let me sit on his shoulders for a good chunk of the show, so I had an
Killer.
awesome view, and it was just a great experience. Probably the coolest thing my dad ever did for me as a kid was take me to this concert.
Killer memory, though. Hell yeah. So and that was like, that's what I want to do. When you saw Ace Frehley.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. And I know so many kids have that, and and some go on and do it and some don't. They get caught up in life, or they just never really, move forward on the instrument or whatever, but, I stuck with it,
Did you take lessons?
I didn't. Now I'm going to qualify that by saying I went to one lesson with an electric guitar teacher. It was after I'd already been playing for a few years, and already, I knew some songs. I could play a couple solos. I could play like some Angus Young and some Tony Iommi and what have you. And but it was years and years and years ago, and it was at Thoroughbred Music.
Oh, nice.
When I think I was 17. I was 17. And I think I was already starting to play like some Randy Rhoads and some stuff like that. And it was with the guitar player Dallas Perkins, who
I remember Dallas. Oh yeah,
yeah. It was with Dallas. I don't really remember anything from it. What I mostly remember is him playing, and I remember just being absolutely freaked out by his. I mean, Dallas is great, and Dallas is very cool, and I'm friends with him on Facebook to this day. And not that we stayed in touch over the years, but I always remembered him, and he actually remembered me, and so we ended up connecting on Facebook. But I told him this when we talked not that long ago, a few months back. I said, "Man, I just remember being freaked out by the way you hold your pick." He held his pick so weird, with like three fingers and a weird angle, and it works for him. And all kinds of people play all kinds of ways. But I remember it just absolutely freaked me out because I had already been playing for a while. I already developed my own way of holding the pick. And the way I held the pick looked like what I saw most other guitar players doing. And what Dallas did was very weird. And I never saw anything even close to that weird again until I started seeing Marty Friedman, play. But so Dallas, I took one lesson from him. I don't remember a lot about it. And I did take probably a month's worth of classical guitar lessons from a fairly famous classical teacher. But that's it. That's the only time I ever took any lessons. I did, when I was in high school in Germany, have an intermediate guitar class. And that's when my dad started letting me play his guitar. He let me take it to school and use it in my guitar class. But the thing about this guitar class was, it was called intermediate guitar. There was no beginner guitar class. There was no advanced guitar class. There was just intermediate guitar class. You could take that class. There was no guitar teacher teaching it. It was the choir teacher. So she could play piano and she could sing, but she didn't play guitar.
Gotcha.
And so she taught us, so she knew how to read music and she knew what it was supposed to sound like. So she would say, learn how to do it, like how to hold the guitar out of these diagrams in the book. It was Mel Bay Book 1. And it was stuff like, Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And, Three Blind Mice and stuff like that is what was in there. Jingle bells and what have you. And she was just like, look, I'm not a guitar teacher. She was just honest with everybody. And she said, I have to teach something. I have to show what my curriculum was and that you guys have done the work. So just do this book. Once a week, you'll recite me something out of the book to show you did it. The rest of the week, you guys should just get together in a group and, teach each other stuff. And so it just, the class would just partition off into like 2 or 3 little groups, and I was just with the guys who like rock and metal, and we just sat in a circle in the back of the room and would show each other riffs,
Cool.
show each other licks and riffs, and that's what we did. And that was just a great experience for that. So, but it wasn't really lessons so much. It was just jamming with my friends and my peers at school, and it was helpful in that regard because I got to, play with all the guys who were much, better than me at school, who could actually play songs when I was just barely struggling to, at age 15 when I arrived and enrolled in that class,
So you said you started your first band there. What was the name of that band?
This is interesting because you understand this is Germany. This is a Frankfurt area, Gießen, Butzbach, Frankfurt region, and about 3 hours away. And this was 1984 that I formed this band, and we played one show, and it was a variety show for the school. To be honest, it wasn't even a variety show for my school because I was in high school, for Frankfurt American High School. It was a variety show for our drummer's junior high because he was in junior high, and he went to Gießen Junior High with my sister, and so it was a variety show at this junior high school, and we played it, and that's the only time we ever played. But we did have a name. I designed a logo, the whole nine. I still have it somewhere. I did it with a ruler and a protractor, and it was we were called Assassin.
Okay.
This was 1984, and I don't know when the German band Assassin formed, but they were only about 3 hours away from where we were. Now, I don't think, this is way before the internet, and we were literally nobody. We did one little high school variety show.
Right.
So I'm sure, and Assassin, come on, you're in a metal band, you're trying to come up with a cool name. Assassin's going to pop up at some point. And so I'm sure they came up with it completely on their own. But I just found it, interesting, all these years later, like, wow, right at the same time that Assassin, the band who put out, like, Interstellar Experience and all that stuff, those sort of cool records. I think didn't they have an album called something like The Upcoming Terror or something like that? I'm not sure.
Did you have any originals, or did you play covers? And if you played covers, what kind of songs were they?
Like Judas Priest and Kiss. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I think we played old Def Leppard songs.
Right. When I used to love Def Leppard back then too.
Yeah. Oh,
Fuck
dude,
yeah.
Like On Through the Night.
Yes.
And that's just back in the day, that was stuff, man. They were great.
Fuck yeah.
Before they went like total pop, they were really great.
Yeah. So, and then you moved back to the States, to the Tampa area, and that's when you did the Dallas Perkins one.
Yeah, I did a single guitar lesson with Dallas, and then but what I also started doing was I got a job, but I used all my money to buy guitar equipment. I had some pretty nice equipment for a 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid, and so throughout the course of that, going from 17 to 18 to getting close to 19, during that period, I first was working a job. Then I started teaching guitar lessons.
Oh, okay.
I started getting better and better, and I had started developing my knowledge to the point where I could actually teach. And so I started teaching, and but I also was going on auditions constantly.
That's pretty.
I auditioned for.
How did you realize that you were that fucking good to give lessons? You just knew.
I don't think I was that good to give lessons, but I was good enough to give lessons to young kids.
I gotcha.
To younger kids.
Gotcha.
Most of my students were anywhere from like 11 or 12 up to 16, 17 years old.
Gotcha.
And so I and of course, and then Brian Kidd was one of my students.
Yeah.
And I gave lessons, and I started going on auditions. And the way I found the auditions was the way everyone found auditions in the Tampa area back then. You would go to Thoroughbred Music and go to the bulletin board.
Yep.
The cork board that was in that long hallway where the teacher studios were off of that hallway,
mm-hmm.
and I think the restrooms were off of that hallway. And in that hallway was a big old cork board, and I would just go on auditions. And so when I wasn't teaching, I was quite often spending my money that I earned from teaching at Thoroughbred, and I would check the bulletin board all the time. And I found a lot of auditions. I auditioned for a lot of bands from the Bay Area back then that you would probably remember. And you remember a band in the area that was called Vengeance?
Yes, I do. I think they changed it to Vengeance Inc. later.
Probably so. I don't know. I auditioned for them when they were just called Vengeance. And remember, this was the first guy I ever seen that had like a recording studio built into his house. And it was actually pretty cool. Like he was going to town on it.
Killer.
It was actually pretty cool. But I auditioned and I did not get it. Yeah, and I know that you remember Oblivion.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I still see the bass player all the time, and because he jams with another buddy of mine's band, and Keith. Yeah,
Keith.
Yeah, we laughed. He laughed like, man, we tried. I still remember when we auditioned this kid, man. We turned him down, and then he goes off and becomes like more famous than anybody. Like, oh no, I didn't. But but it's a fun thing that comes up usually when we hang out. When I'm hanging around those guys.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I didn't get any. I didn't make any of the auditions. But what happened was, throughout the 2 years that I was doing this, year and a half to 2 years that I was going on auditions, and, I was steadily learning. I was teaching, so I had to keep up with learning things to teach. I had to learn a lot of songs. I had to learn a lot of theory so that I'd have things to teach. And so I was just doing it by the seat of my pants, just learning what I had to learn so that I could learn the songs that I needed to learn and teach and to get better on the guitar. I was highly motivated to get better. So throughout just because of the time passing, I was getting better. And then also because of the fact that I failed those auditions, I usually would ask the people in the band, hey, that's cool. You didn't pick me. No problem. But could you tell me what it is that you didn't like so that I would know what I need to improve?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Sometimes they had really good advice, like, your technique is still a little rough, and you kind of have a tendency to rush a bit. They would say stuff like that to me, and I would learn from that. I would take that to heart, and I would go, okay, I got to tighten up my technique. And I got really good advice from one of these people, like, record yourself, even if it's just with a little tape deck. Record yourself and listen back to it. And that was fantastic advice. And I give that advice to people to this day. Record yourself and listen to it critically. Find your weak spots. It's not enough just to play and pay attention. You're not going to hear it the same when you're actually playing it as you do when you listen back to a recording.
Right. Yeah.
And I learned more about timing and just all that stuff. And then eventually it started getting to the point where the bands weren't saying so much about, and early criticisms were about my equipment. And you don't really have professional equipment. Well, during the course of that 2 years, I'm working and I wasn't paying rent because I was living at home with my mom, and I was buying equipment. So by the end of that 2 year period, by about a year and a half in, they could no longer say that I didn't have good equipment, and I had improved so much on those other things that the criticism I started to hear more than anything else was that I didn't fit the image. My hair wasn't long enough yet. I was growing it, that it hadn't completely grown out yet. But it did. But by the end of that year and a half, it started. By the end of 2 years, it was grown relatively long. And I stopped trimming it as much also in that last half a year, and just would get, this lady who used to cut my mom's hair, and she was just drilled on how to cut my hair. Like, literally just clip off. Don't cut off an inch. Literally just shear off the split end. That's it.
Yeah.
So I wanted my hair to grow because that was a big thing in the 80s, man.
It
you had
was.
to have long hair.
It was.
I mean, there's so many kids in metal bands these days that, have short hair, and it's no big deal. No one cares.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s, like, even with the thrash bands that, it wasn't just the bands who used hairspray and makeup. It was even the thrash bands that wore torn jeans and Chuck Taylor All-Stars.
Yeah.
It was you had to have long hair at least. I mean, you could have stupid bangs and tuck your shirt in, which, if you look at my picture on the back of Spiritual Healing, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Almost everybody did that. Everybody did that back then.
That was me. I had bangs and I tucked my shirt in. And but yeah, everyone did it. Everyone had bangs and tucked their shirt in. But it was weird. It was like, that was 1989 when that photo was taken, but the album came out in February of 1990. And it was just almost like a finger snap in 1990. People stopped having bangs, and tucking their shirts in. It was literally like a switch flip when the decade turned over. But yeah. And so eventually I came across an ad. I got to the point where my hair was kind of long. My equipment was really good. I had improved massively on all my weak spots, and I had probably even gone further than that. And I went to Thoroughbred one day, and I was just like, man, I got to find a band. And I went back there, and I looked, and I saw this ad. And it said, speed metal band recently relocated from California. We're about to drop our new album on Combat Records. Looking for, guitar player, so to fill up the lineup for our upcoming European and UK tour. Did not say who it was. It just said call for information. They didn't want to put who it was. They just wanted to try people out. And so I called the number, and the person I reached and it was the first time I ever spoke to him, Richard Bateman.
Nice.
And he had, he explained to me where he lived. He was still living, you remember where Richard used to live with his mom and dad?
Yeah.
And they had that like sort of shed garage thing in the back that was Richard's jam room.
Yep.
And there was band equipment stuff set up in there, and I went over there and I met with him. And he was like, all right, cool. You got good gear. And I was like, yeah, I told him what I had. Like, yeah, I got like a Marshall half stack. I have two, custom, Charvel, back then the Made in America San Dimas customs, I got really good gear. And, they're like, wow, yeah, that's real professional gear. Sweet. You look the part, just need to hear you play it. I played some guitar for him, I think. He said, man, yeah, you're good. We got to hear if you can play the material. So he told me who the band was, and it was Agent Steel.
Awesome.
And he said the brand new album's about to come out. He gave me he told me to get a tape and learn a couple of songs of the older material, and I think that is what I did. And then he set up an audition with the rest of the band. I came, I met everybody, and I played. And I was at the end of 2 years of going on auditions and working on getting in a band, because where I lived was very remote, and it was my opportunities to form a band were slim and none. I would have needed to have relocated to Tampa, and I didn't have the means to do that at that point. But I did have the means to maintain a vehicle and drive it back and forth to Tampa for rehearsals.
Right.
And so that is what I did. And
from Lakeland.
From Lakeland to Tampa.
Wasn't it off of Macintosh?
It was actually even worse than that. It was actually worse than that because I was giving guitar lessons in Lakeland, but I was living with my mom out in. I mean, this is to people from around here. It's going to sound redneck. much less to people
Yeah.
that have no idea about Polk County, Florida. Bradley Junction.
I know the name. I just can't remember where that is.
Bradley Junction. It's like you go south on South Florida Avenue until you go straight through Mulberry and keep going.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
And you keep going a while.
South
and then you eventually get to Bradley Junction. Out there where all the phosphate mines are and all that stuff.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Richard's house, was that off of McIntosh, I believe, or something?
I can't really remember, but it wasn't too far removed from Hillsborough. I know that.
Yeah.
It wasn't too terribly far away from Hillsborough Ave.
I was in a band later on in the early 90s that our band practiced right next door to them. And at the time, it was when Ben and Richard were doing Gardy Lou.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was Post Agent Steel, yeah.
Right. So anyways, Agent Steel, and you got the gig.
Yeah, I actually got the gig. I was saying, I had been off like 2 years of rejections that I half expected a rejection. So when I got it, I was super shocked. But at the same time, there was a part of me that was like, yeah, you've done the work. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You've put in the work. I got it. And then I got to tell you, Dave, this was probably the biggest kick in my pants. This event is what prepared me and paved the way for me to get in depth and to do the work that I did on spiritual healing, which launched the rest of my career. Was the moment they handed me that advanced tape of their new album that was going to be dropping in a month or two, and that we were going to be doing a tour for. Yeah. And that album was called Unstoppable Force. It was already recorded. It was already in the can before I ever auditioned. So I didn't, I wasn't playing on an album with them, but I was going to tour in support of their of it when it came out. And, but I had to take it home and I had to learn it. I had to learn all of that lead guitarist solos.
Right.
One of the guitarists that had gotten replaced when they moved to California was an old guy that's been a friend of mine now for 30 some odd years, Juan Garcia.
Yeah.
Who people might remember from Evil Dead and then also now from Body Count.
Yeah.
But the guy, that wasn't whose parts I was playing. I was playing the other guy, this kid named, he's not a kid anymore, but back then he was a kid just like me, but his name was Bernie Versailles, just like Versailles, France, Bernie Versailles.
Gotcha.
And he was a really small Filipino kid. And I remember seeing his picture and I was just like, I looked at his picture and I was like, man, he's short. Shit. And I remember thinking, I bet that fucker can play good. Let me listen to this. How hard is this going to be? I bet it. And I was expecting it to be good. I don't know why, but he just looked like someone that could play,
Yeah.
And I put it in and I listened to it and I was just like, oh shit. I might not be able to do this gig because they want me to play those solos note for note. Oh man, what did I get myself into? This guy is so beyond what I'm capable of. But wow. They felt I could do it. I think I probably even expressed that. I think I even expressed to them, like, I'll work my ass off. I'll put every spare minute I have into getting this stuff down. But this guy is good, and I don't know if I can pull these off for sure at this level. And they were like, no, we believe in you. You can do it. You can do it. Just do it.
Hell yeah.
And I just had to do it. It was do or die. And it really stepped up my game to learn Bernie's solos. It really, I don't think, it didn't influence me to play like him, but because I already had all my influences. I already kind of sounded like me. I sounded like a less technically able version of me, that everyone knows now. I already had my melodic sense and all of that. But some of the technical skills that were in his solos, forget about it, man. I had to learn them. And it was nothing that I hadn't heard before, but I had heard it before on like instructional tapes of really awesome players like Vinnie Moore and Tony McAlpine and Ingve and stuff, you know. And I was just like, yeah, I can't really do those yet. I'm studying that. I was studying that stuff. I was practicing that stuff, but I didn't have it up to that level, and I had to bring it as close up to that level as I could to be able to even pull that gig off. And it was as many other bad aspects as there were to that gig, because, and I'm sure you heard a lot over the years, Dave, that it was awful. I absolutely hated it. Richard hated it. We both bailed at our first opportunity to bail, but we did that tour. We had that experience together, and I'm glad that I did that tour. I'm certainly glad that I had to go through that, because number one, it prepared me to be able to do. I went back to guitar teaching, and I did that for a while, and but you know, then eventually I went to a death show, and that was in support of leprosy at the old Sunset Club.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it on Fletcher? Wasn't it?
Yes.
Used to be on Fletcher, right across where the old brass mug and wood nickel and stuff were.
You know, the building's still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I drove by it not long ago. It's a trip. I got to take a picture of it. I keep forgetting, because that's a historic building.
Right.
To us.
Well, I went, to us, for sure, because it probably just looks like a hovel to anyone else, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember I was walking into the show, and I was like, you know, let me get. There's people, as there always was at the Sunset Club prior to the official doors and the first band about to start. Lots of people would chill in the parking lot, hang out, and I remember, you know, drinking beers out of their car or whatever, you know, smoking weed, and but I wanted to go ahead on and get in, because I was a huge Death fan. I loved Scream, loved Leprosy. I wanted to get in and get a good position, and you know, get ready for the show. So as I'm headed towards the door, you know, I saw some people milling about, talking to each other off to my left, just sort of in my peripheral vision. But as I headed towards the door, I just heard this voice go like, "Cool shirt, dude." And I turned and looked, and I immediately recognized that it was Chuck, you know?
Yeah, what were you?
Evil Chuck, as we used to call him back in the day.
Yes.
And he knew who Age of Steel was. He was a fan. The art on the shirt was Mad Locust Rising, the EP art, but it had tour dates from the tour that I did on the back.
Okay, cool.
It was a shirt we sold on the tour. So he's like, "Oh, dude, where'd you get that shirt, bro?" And that's when I told him, "Oh, well, I got it because I went on tour with the band on this tour that's listed on the back." And you know, that was about you know, at that point that had been like a year. That was just last year, '87, and this was '88 that I went to this show, and it just opened up a whole conversation. You know, like, "Oh yeah, you're that dude that got that gig. Oh man, I heard about you, man. I heard you're really good." You know. And I was just like, "Oh, that's nice. That's cool to hear that. That's the word that's going around about me." I don't feel really good, but you know, I appreciate it. You know, that he said that, and you know, we started talking about all the records we liked. I started talking. You know, we ended up getting a whole conversation about how I had just a couple of years prior to that had been living in Europe and had all these really cool European vinyls. And he was like, "Oh, dude, I love all these French bands." Like. And I was just like, "Wow, like Sortal H-Bomb." He was like, "Yeah." You know, we got into a whole conversation about that. And then Terry and Bill got in on it. And the next thing you know, I had been doing interviews, or I had made the agreement to do some interviews because back then there were things called fanzines, and they were black and white print stapled together. You know them, Dave.
Oh yeah. You know, I still have some hanging around.
Yeah, you'd go get them printed on A4, fold them over, staple them together, or whatever. You know, they're black and white, and because there was a lack of press covering the extreme metal scene, so we did it ourselves with fanzines. And there was a Dutch fanzine called Ravenous Mag back then. A guy named Ad van Osh did that out of I forget whether he was out of Tilburg or Amsterdam. I forget now, but I met him on that tour with Age of Steel. And I said, "Yeah, man, dude, I'd love to do some like covers the Florida scene for you. Do like show reviews, band interviews, stuff like that." He was like, he was like, yes, that would be fantastic. You could be my U.S., my Florida correspondent, And so I brought that up. I said, well, hey, I kind of agreed to do like interviews and stuff for this Dutch fanzine, man. If you guys want, so we ended up doing that. We went across the street against the side of that, that building that had the big bare wall. I forget what that was. It was literally right across the street from Sunset, the other side of Fletcher.
Wow.
And
I don't remember.
I took pictures of them up against that wall, and they're the most awful photos ever because I was no photographer at all. I think I did them with my old Kodak disc camera, if you remember those monstrosities.
Oh God, yeah.
And I interviewed him and stuff, and so, but it was through that meeting that, it was a combination of meeting Chuck because I had done the Age of Steel tour and he recognized my shirt. The only reason I met him that night and talked to him, and the only reason why, and by the time we were done doing that whole interview and everything, I gave Chuck and Terry both my phone number, which was my mother's number, and said, yeah, this is the best number for me. It's my mom's number. I think they're going to be living there for years, so no matter what I do, you'll be able to reach me through there. And I was just like, hey, if you guys ever know any bands, that bands on your label or bands you tour with or whatever, need a guitar player. Because Chuck was already, it was clear from talking with Chuck, he was like, man, you must be really good. And I was like, so, okay, he knows I have live experience now. He knows I can play that kind of stuff.
Right.
So what does it hurt? Give him my number, You used to have to network like that. People network over social media now. And I imagine people still network face to face, but that's the way we did it back then. I think I just wrote it, scribbled on I had paper and pen in my car, and I scribbled down my phone number for Bill and Terry, and they both took it and put it in their wallets or whatever. And the other, and of course I couldn't help but notice at the time, hey, Rick's awesome. I've always been a fan of Rick. He is the master of what he does, and but I could tell on that day when I hung out with them at that show, I got a sense like they were not like super, super happy with him.
Right.
Because, they would like kind of roll their eyes when he turned away and, stuff like that. I was like, wow, this is a weird dynamic. And I was like, shit, well, this sucks, but I thought, well, who knows? Well, if Rick doesn't laugh, maybe they'll call me, Several months went by, and I decided to move up to Atlanta because I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to the Atlanta Institute of Music, study guitar. I went up there and ended up moving in with Dave Stewart from Hallows Eve, was my roommate, because his mom owned several rental properties, and Dave did renovations and stuff. So I hooked up with him, and we renovated together, worked on renovating one of her mom's properties, and then we moved into it, and she gave us really good rent. And I never did go to the school. I ended up working at a landscaping company, but I was living in Atlanta, and technically jamming with Hallows Eve because they were working on getting their, reviving their contract. Metal Blade wanted to hear a demo, so we were starting to write songs, and we were looking for, I think we were looking for a permanent drummer or permanent, I don't know. It was me and Dave Stewart, and it was Tommy Stewart, the original bass player. Granted, he was not, he's not related to Dave Stewart, even spelled differently, but they were both original members of the band, Tommy and Dave Stewart. And
well, how did you meet them?
Then it was me. I don't remember how I met Dave.
Because it's wild that you worked with them and lived with them.
Here's what I think it was. I would have to ask Dave because I don't remember, and he might. But he's on my Facebook, so I could reach out and ask him.
Maybe through agents still.
Well, what I think it was is that I had gone up there to take a tour of the AIM, Atlanta Institute of Music, and there were lots of other musicians hanging around there, lots of other guitar players, and I think that just through talking about wanting to go up there, someone made the connection. It's like, well, this guy, you should talk to,
Oh, gotcha.
Talk to Dave Stewart. You had been in Age of Steel. I think they're looking for a guitar player, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They tried to revive their band. Something like that happened. And so I was up there living, and phone rings one day, and I was in my bedroom, playing guitar, and Dave comes to my door and knocks on it and pops his head in, and he goes, "Oh, it's the phone for you, James." And I was like, I thought it was my mom. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll get him to go see." what my mom wants. And he just kind of looks at me weird and goes, dude, I think it's Evil Chuck. And I was like, no shit. I went, and sure enough, it was Chuck. And so, there's a whole story of how it flowed from there, but suffice to say that that's how I got the gig in Death. And it directly flowed from having done the Agent Steel gig, because that's how Chuck noticed me at that gig. And that's how I ended up talking to him most of the night, both before and after the gig, and how they ended up with my number and ultimately called me once Rick was out. And
crazy.
Yeah.
I used to, when I met Terry and they were practicing for the Leprosy recording, and they were practicing to go on a Scream Bloody Gore tour. And, so I went to Chuck's house all the time, and I actually drove Billy and Terry a lot to their practice. I didn't go to all of them, but back to Tony McAlpine, Chuck asked me one day, hey, do you want to go and see and meet Tony McAlpine? I was like, fuck yeah.
Wow.
And that was a cool experience. But anyway, so I was good friends with him, and Terry calls me one day and he says, well, Rick's out, but we got another guy. You might know him. He's from Lakeland. And it's ironic that he says that, because it's like saying, oh, you're from Lakeland, you know this guy? Well, I actually did. I knew who you were, and I knew that you weren't living there anymore. And he said, yeah, well, he lives in Atlanta, but I think he's coming back here, and that's our new guitarist. And I was like, crazy. That's wild. Small world.
Yeah. What's really crazy is how it did flow from there, because when I very first took that phone call, I felt so committed to the Hallows Eve thing that I initially turned him down. I said, dude, just thanks for thinking of me. I feel like I owe it to these guys to stay and give this a shot, I actually turned it down.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And so Chuck said, oh, that's cool. That's admirable, that you're going to stick to your, keep your commitment. And so I understand. And he probably was thinking I was insane though. And we got off the phone. And, back then you didn't just call someone up. You had to catch them at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got off the phone, and right about that time, some people started showing up. We were having a little get together, some booze and whatnot. We were, so all the dudes were there. We were waiting on some girls to show up, and we were already, cutting into the beer, and there was probably some weed getting passed around, which, already by then, you've known me for years. I smoked some weed in high school, but I decided I didn't like it, so I never smoked again after that. And so I was like that then. Even they were passing weed around, I wasn't. But I was probably having a beer, and Dave likes telling the guys that are there, and the guys that are there, you might know kind of who they are. At the time, they were named Richard and Britt Turner. Well, they're still named Richard and Britt Turner, but they were at that time members of a band called Nihilist.
Yes.
Obviously
I had seen them.
Obviously not the Nihilists that became Entombed, because they were from Sweden. But there was a Georgia band named Nihilist. It was sort of like a death thrash, speed metal, sort of crossover type of thing at the time. And Richard and Britt Turner were the drummer and bass player, respectively, Britt and Richard Turner were the drummer and bass player, respectively, of that band at the time. And they're still around. They're still working musicians, but they've gone a completely different way. They are the drummer and bass player now, and have been for years, of that band Blackberry Smoke, that sort of southern rock band.
Yes. I was just going to say, anyway, Nihilist would go and play Huntsville, Alabama with my friend Skeletal Earth, and that's how I got to know who Nihilist was.
Okay, yeah. They were cool, man. I liked them.
They were killer.
Quite a bit. They were really good.
Yeah, they were killer.
But Richard and Britt were there at the party there at mine and Dave Stewart's pad. And Dave was like, dude, dude, guess who just called James tonight, man? Chuck, evil Chuck from Death. And they're like, whoa, really? What the hell did he call you about? Do you know him? I was like, well, I mean, I've met him, but I didn't really know him very good. But he called and asked me if I wanted to come audition for Death. And Dave Stewart looks at me and goes, well, what did you tell him? And they're all looking at me, and I said, well, I told him I thought he was just like a gas and I was about to leave,
Yeah.
I was like, well, I told him that I was committed to seeing this thing out with Hallows Eve. That we got this thing going on that I felt committed. And every single one of those dudes, Richard, Britt, Dave Stewart, and the other guys over there were all like, are you fucking crazy? What the fuck? I was just like, oh shit. And I just stood there and it just sunk in how insane it was of me to turn that down. Because I loved it. They knew me as a huge Death fan because I had been talking about them to them.
Right, right.
They were like, dude, you love that band. What the hell are you thinking? I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know. I was trying to be cool. They're like, dude, that's fucking stupid. And I was like, I'm going to call him back. And I ran to the phone and called him back. And he was gone. But his mom, Jane answered. And she was very sweet. And she goes, oh, no, honey, he's out for the night. He probably won't be back in until very late and, too late to call. But I'll let him know. And he'll be in tomorrow. You can call him tomorrow. And I was like, damn it, I got work the next day. Shit. So I got up. I went to work the next day. I formulated a plan because when I talked to Chuck, I was just like, okay, well, if I do this, I'm going to have to, pack my car with everything I would need for an audition and for a few nights stay at my relative's houses down there, and I'll just stay the weekend. I'll take I can take a long weekend from work. So that was like a Thursday or a Friday. I went into work and I let them know that I was going to be taking the Friday off and, be gone all weekend. And they were cool with it. My work was cool with it, whatever.
Yeah.
And, I made the plan and I had already told I came home and, I was home kind of early because we started really early. I think I was home about 3. I started packing the car. And then Jane had told me that probably a good time to call Chuck was probably around 4:30. So I called and I got Chuck. And I was like, dude, Chuck, I've been trying to reach you since last night. I tried to call. He goes, yeah. My mom told me. And I was like, yeah, what do you need, man? What's up? And I was like, dude, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I love Death. Of course I want to come audition. I've already packed my car. I've already taken the Friday off, work. I'm coming. I want to do it. And he goes, oh man. Well, when you turned it down, we went to the next person on our list and we had him out that night. That's where I was. I was out trying him out and we gave him the gig. A guy named Mark something. Yeah. Some guy named Mark. And, they gave him the gig. And I was like, oh man. And then my brain was just racing and I was just, I don't know what to do. I've already taken the time off work. I've already told my family I'm coming and I've already packed my car,
Yeah.
So I just said, well, I've already taken the day off, the extra time off work. I've already told my family I'm coming. So I'm going to go ahead and come. If nothing else, is there one of the days this weekend we could just hang out and shoot the shit about music, spin some records, do something cool, just hang, and it was like, yeah, we're going to be at, Terry's house on, this particular, I think on the Saturday evening, we're going to be out at Terry's house and, you can come hang out, after rehearsal, we're all going back to Terry's and we're going to hang. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be there. Give me the address. I got the address. I went. I showed up there. I hung out with them all night. Bill, Terry, and Chuck. And we spun records. We talked about all our favorite, obscure European metal bands, and especially the French ones. And we just played our favorite songs, and we talked for a couple hours, a few hours. And then I said, well, I probably should be getting back soon, but I want to do one more thing before I leave. If you guys would just indulge me on it, you know? And they were like, cool. I was like, all right, I got to go out to the car. And, you know, I went out to the car. I grabbed my guitar. I grabbed my little practice amp setup. And I grabbed a boom box with, you know, and my desk cassette. And I brought it in and I set it up, you know, just like a little low volume play along. And I said, I'm just going to play. If nothing else, this will show you that I can play this material so that you can recommend me for some other bands maybe. And they were like, they were up. Okay. They were just kind of, they humored me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
They humored me. And so I played along to several songs off Scream and Leprosy, just the way I had learned to play them by ear. And whenever it was like one of Rick's solos, I would kind of start it kind of the same, but then I'd go off into my own thing, you know?
Yeah.
And just do what I would do. And I told them that. I said, I'll kind of start the solo kind of like they start on the album, but then I want to show you what I would do, you know, my own style.
Right, right.
And they were like, okay, cool. And they sat there and watched me play. Occasionally I saw them looking at each other and kind of nodding their heads and kind of like, okay. And when I was done, I said, all right, yeah, I just wanted to do that just so you could see. And they're like, yeah, well, you can definitely, Chuck was like, yeah, well, you can definitely play the songs. No doubt about that. Well, you learn them pretty good, you know? And,
right.
I was like, all right, cool. Well, take it easy. And if you're ever aware of any gigs on any bands you're touring with or on your label or anything like that, or, you know, however you may hear about it, throw my name out there, you know? And, I packed up and left, shook hands, said our goodbyes, finished out the weekend with my relatives in Lakeland, and then drove my happy ass back to Atlanta, my very unhappy ass back to Atlanta.
Right.
And I was so depressed when I got back, knowing that I was about to have to go into work at this damn landscaping job. I got up that day. You know, I got in kind of late. I took the most crucial things like my guitar and stuff out of the car, but it was still mostly packed with my stuff. I got up the next day and I was like, I got to unpack the rest of this car and go to work. I was up pretty early, but pretty early before I even left to go to work, I think. The phone rings and Dave Stewart comes to my door again. Dude, I think it's Evil Chuck again. So I go back and I answer the phone and he's like, dude, James, hey, check it out. You know, already just like by third practice, like Mark has already made excuses 2 days in a row why he can't come to practice. So we're moving on from him. And you've basically already auditioned, dude. So if you want the gig, it's yours, dude. And I was like,
hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I was like, dude, I haven't even unpacked my car yet, really. I will be no time back. I'm going to, you know, I'll be back in a matter of like a day. You know, give me a day and I'll be back there.
Yeah.
And so he gave me the time and address of my first rehearsal with them. And I packed my shit and I was out of there, man. I went by my job and said, yo, let me get my last check. I'm out.
Nice.
And I moved back to Florida, moved into my mom's house and was in the band. So that's how that all played out.
Now, did you go on tour immediately, or did you start writing for Spiritual Healing, or how did that go?
We were, yeah, almost immediately. Like my very first rehearsal with the band, they already knew I could play the older stuff. I think we might have played through a few of the older songs. Maybe Chuck might have showed me, okay, here's where you're doing that a little different than us. You know,
I gotcha. Yeah,
there wasn't too much of that because there was some of that on the Scream songs just because of the dirtiness of the production, which I think is really cool. To me, it's an endearing aspect of that album, but it did make it hard to hear some of the things, you know, guitar-wise, exactly what's going on, especially when you're trying to do it from a cassette back in the day, when you really couldn't slow stuff down as much. I didn't have a way to slow a cassette down. So, had half of the album written when I showed up for my very first audition.
Gotcha.
They had half of it written. They, showed me the 4 songs they had finished. And that's what we did the first day, was just it was teach James the 4 songs that are done on the album, you know? And so they did that, and I picked those up really quick. And, you know, and I just had my head in the death headspace at that moment, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I had been learning, you know, the spiritual healing the Scream Bloody Gore and leprosy songs. I already knew some of them before I auditioned, but I learned more. And, you know, and then they taught me the spiritual healing songs. So I had like just death riffs stuck in my brain, you know?
Yeah.
And it was and they were in writing mode. So when I come up for the second day of rehearsal, we started working on a song, and honestly, I think it was Low Life. And Chuck you know, they play the whole like intro and verse riff and everything, and then they stop and go, "Yeah, that's what we have of this one so far, just that much." And this is like, you have something you think would fit here? And I just went, yes, I do. And I didn't, but I just said yes. And I started playing something, and I started playing down, 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 bam, bam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Billy just locked in with it, and they were all like, "Yeah, that's cool. That works. That's fucking cool chorus, of course, you know."
Oh yeah.
It just worked, and then I think I also added the riff after that, and another couple, you know, maybe a couple of the riffs under the solos or something like that, you know. So I just started contributing right away, and I didn't have anything pre-written, but my brain was in that mode, and you know, I knew enough I didn't know a lot about songwriting, but I knew enough to create contrast, you know. Okay, everything was sort of speedy and fast up till this point. Let me do something kind of doomy and slow, and I just did something that fit. I pulled it right out of my ass. I think I told him that, yeah, I got a riff. I didn't really have a riff. I made it up on the spot, but it worked out.
Right. Did you have riffs though before that? I mean, on your own?
I had literally, before that album, I had only ever written, I mean, I had come up with some riffs here and there. They all suck if you ask me, you know, but the only time I had ever written a song that ever, you know, with a band, that got performed with a band, was when I was in Agent Steel, they wanted to have one new song to perform on tour, to start working on, and even, you know, an album beyond Unstoppable Force. And so I wrote a song. I wrote the riff, and it became a song at that time called The Unexpected. They eventually put it out years later, a studio version, without, you know, obviously without my playing, and they completely renamed it and redid the lyrics, but it's still with my riff and everything.
Gotcha.
But it was called The Unexpected, and we did perform it live on that tour. And that was the only time I had written a song with other people, like to completion, like a song start to end, that then was performed on stage. I had tons of little riffs and you know, and all that sort of thing, but I'd never put anything together.
Gotcha.
But pretty much every riff that I contributed to spiritual healing, I made it up right before, right when it was needed.
On the spot.
We need a riff here. Yeah. They're like, we need a riff here. Okay, here's one. You know, and I just pulled it out of my ass.
Wow. That's killer.
They all worked out. They're all, you know, there's a lot of the very well known riffs on spiritual healing, you know.
Wow.
So I co-wrote 4 of the songs with the band.
Crazy.
Like,
hell yeah.
A big chunk of riffs on each of those 4 songs. And it was such a good experience. Everyone was, I mean, they were all very receptive to what I was putting out there. You know, it was a whole different story once I was in Obituary, because when I was in Obituary, they had an album written and recorded except for solos.
Yes.
So I walked into the studio and threw solos down, and then it was time to tour in support of the first album while we waited for the second album to come out. And then we toured in support of the second album. So there was no writing for a long time. And so in the meantime of that, you know, I was just like, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be in this band long. They always said if Alan wanted to come back, that they would take him back.
Yeah.
And he's going to see, and he only left because he wasn't sure if the band could make money. Well, the band's making money. He's going to see that. He's probably going to want to come back.
Yeah.
So
because
I'm
he had
just
the
going to
kid.
write my own riffs. Yeah, exactly. So I was writing my own riffs. I was for my own project. I already had the name and everything, Disincarnate and everything. And this one day at rehearsal, it was like sort of, I think, before the last tour I did with them, which was the SOS tour, Status Obituary Sepultura.
Yep.
I think I was at the jam pad,
Yep.
the old OB jam pad in that duplex or whatever,
Yeah.
And Trevor, it was me and Trevor were the first ones there or whatever, and we were just hanging out. And Trevor goes like, "Dude, do you have any riffs that you can let me hear?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I have riffs, but they don't sound anything like Obituary because I wasn't writing them for Obituary. I was writing them for my own project that I'm calling Disincarnate, sort of just like a solo project thing." And I was like, "I want to do that, I think I said it to Trevor right then and there. I want to do that regardless of what happens with me with the band, whether I stay in the band or whether I go. Whether you guys, something happens like Alan wants to come back or whatever. I want to do this project, and the riffs are nothing like Obituary, man. So I mean,
gotcha.
I mean, if you want to hear riffs from me because you want to hear how I write riffs and whether they would fit in Obituary, you need to give me. I got to come up with some Obituary style riffs because that's what I did in Death. When I was in Death, I had I do a bunch of Death material, so I wrote and I knew where the new direction was going on the where the direction was headed on the new album. I had all those riffs in my head, and so I was able to just create on the spot and make up riffs. I could do that with Obituary too, but I would need, we would need to, you need to give me some input. Like, here's the song, what do you got to go here? And I'll fucking whip out a riff.
Right.
Cool, and Trevor, well, yeah, I just want to hear the riffs you got. I was like, those Disincarnate riffs or whatever you called it. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure.
So,
but they're not Obituary riffs. And so I was confident at that time that he understood that they weren't Obituary riffs. And so that he wouldn't, think, oh, James can't write Obituary riffs. Because I surely could.
Right.
But I didn't,
So with back to Death for a minute, did you I
thought we were done with Death.
Well, I was just, so y'all recorded at Morris Sound. I stepped into the studio a couple of times there and was lucky enough to be in Morris Sound for a lot of fucking killer fucking albums. But
you were.
Fucking so then you went on tour and you were only with Death for one album. Was it just time to part ways or not going?
Well, I kind of saw and I mean, if you talk to pretty much any former member now, everyone, including myself, we all have the proper, the reverence that you would expect we have for Chuck's body of work, for his legacy, and for our part in it, and, it's all love, man,
Yes.
But, back in the day, in the time, we were all young. There were butting heads.
Yes.
There were butting heads with me. Just a handful of months later, there were butting heads with Phil and Terry, and Chuck went on to have a string of experience of getting people butting heads with him and parting ways. And, Chuck was the visionary of Death. It was his show.
Yes.
And
I always tell everybody he was very cool to me. I never had to work with him. I wasn't a guitarist. I wasn't a drummer.
Yeah.
But when you work with somebody, it could be totally different. You might not see eye to eye. And yes, he always thought of it. It's his vision, and he had
exactly.
He had his vision for it, and it might not always work with whoever's with him at the moment. And so then there's the revolving door.
Yeah, plus it's just also the fact, like, Dave, you've known me for years, and you've known me since I was that kid. And I would not say that I was cocky. I was never cocky because I never thought that highly of myself. I always have been down on myself as a player. Frankly, I think it's what's always driven me to strive to be better, because I never felt I was good enough. And I'm still that way to this day. But what I was in spades back in the day was stubborn.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I was stubborn AF.
You were, let me say this. I had seen when you'd been difficult, but let me tell you something. I look at it as you were confident, and you had the fucking licks, the fucking guitar playing to back that shit up. That is the fucking truth, man. You were fucking.
I appreciate that, Dave. I appreciate
badass motherfucker. And I always thought that. And the funny thing is now that we jump into Obituary, how did you get that gig?
Well, it was as I was, out the door with Death, which frankly was at the end of the tour. And the very first person I called, it was, literally, I was on my last date with the band, and I called Scott Burns.
Scott Burns, yes, sir.
He was the first person I told, was Scott, and so I called Scotty up, and I told him. He's like, dude, bro.
Yeah, I love Scott.
Dude, I'm in the studio with the Oldie Boys right now, Obituary, man. And I was just like, really? And he goes, yeah. Well, I was like, really? That's cool, awesome. And he goes, yeah, they need a guitar player. Dude Allen left. And I was like, dude, talk to him for me, and he did. And he's like, dude, come to the studio as soon as you're back, So we made the plan for the day to come, for a day for me to come to the studio. And I showed up, and they played me the material. I said, yeah, I can do some stuff over that. Absolutely. And they sat me down and just talked to me and said, well, look, we know you can do it. We don't need to audition. Maybe you do a solo, we'll listen to it, but, we'll let you know whether we like it or not. But me too. We know you can do the gig. We've heard spiritual healing. We know you got live experience,
Yeah.
And, tons of it. And, it seems like you're the man for the job, but they gave me the caveat at that moment that, and I think I kind of wore this as a little bit of a chip on my shoulder throughout my whole time in Obituary, and it did affect my relationship with them, even though I accepted it when they told it to me. I was accepting of it that Alan was their boy, and they told it to me just like that. Alan is our boy, and if he ever wants to come back, we will strongly consider it. We might very well take him back if he decides he wants to do it. And so I knew that it was a possibility.
And just so everybody knows, he had a child on the way, and he was concerned about the money. And
he had every right to be concerned about money.
And
when
so,
there's a child involved and it's a band that's never toured, so you don't know how much money they're going to make.
He was going to be he was going to do the right thing and try to make money to support his family.
Yeah, exactly. It was 100% the correct thing to do. No one else in the band had it. Well, Frankie did. Frankie had children, I think. But
right.
He had already established his thing, he just didn't know, what was going to happen, and so I understood completely, and I understood when he came back. I always felt it was a possibility that it would happen. He would see that it was successful, that it was making money. I'm sorry, I'm in a restaurant. Filling up my tea. Sorry.
Gotcha.
So that's just the reality of it was I knew there was a possibility that he would come back, and he did. And I would say that I didn't. I probably with the attitude that I had probably most of the time that I was in the band, I didn't make it hard for them to agree to take him back.
Gotcha.
Because I was sort of an unhappy camper in a lot of ways during a lot of it. I enjoyed the shows. I liked the guys and hanging out with them. Everything was fine with that. But I couldn't help the fact that I had anger related to a number of things. They're not worth going into.
Nah.
Well, I was used to things going a certain way with it. One thing's for sure with that, all the business was done at that time, in front of everyone, and it was, and, I didn't feel like I was privy to the business with Obituary, and that made me unhappy. And, I just sort of felt like I didn't fit, like I was a square peg, trying to fit in a round hole,
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I sort of felt like personality wise, I fit better with Death than I did with Obituary at the time. Nothing against any of the guys; they're all great dudes, and get along with them great to this day. But at the time, when I was an angry young man,
Yeah.
and very, very stubborn, and did not want to partake of the partying that they were it was very much part of the culture of Obituary at that time, and I think probably to this day. I'm not going to speak for them, but I think probably to this day. When I was in Death, it was almost a complete teetotal situation. Chuck didn't even drink alcohol at that time.
It was
He
the
smoked weed,
opposite. It was the opposite.
Yeah, he smoked weed, but he was the only one who did.
Yeah.
He didn't drink booze. Bill and Terry didn't.
No.
And I didn't mind a beer or two now and then, but I also didn't mind. Hey, if no one else is drinking, then I'm not going to either. It didn't bother me one bit.
Right. Yeah.
So and I didn't smoke. I didn't smoke weed or anything like that. So I felt that was a little bit easier for me to fit in there because I wasn't the guy going against the grain when everyone wanted to pitch in and get a couple bags or whatever. Get a
right.
Couple stacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I want to be 100% clear for your listeners. I have absolutely no problem with weed. I know it doesn't bother me. It never has. Every time a referendum comes up on it, I always vote for legalization. And I just don't personally. It's
just not your thing.
It's not my thing. It doesn't do it for me. It makes me feel paranoid and self-conscious, and it makes me want to eat a whole bag of Doritos to myself.
Right.
And then take a nap. And I'm just like, well, the next time I want to feel self-conscious, paranoid, and hungry for a bag of Doritos and take a nap, and wake up with cottonmouth, I'll smoke some weed. But until then, I'm going to abstain.
Right. A funny thing is that, funny in the story between me and you, I remember being at the duplex one day. I think me and Donald had gone out the night before because we used to go out clubbing back then.
Right.
And, I think I was sitting there the next day just chilling, and all of a sudden they said, yeah, we're going to practice. Cause I sat in on the practices a lot. And, I remember, they didn't ever say anything. It was just funny. And then one day, that day, you come in, you knock on the door and you come in, and I'm like, what's happening? And they were like, oh, well, James is in the band now. And I was like, what? I'm so confused. It was just funny. It was a trip, man. And
that rings true to me that they didn't say anything to you because, a year and a half later or whatever it was after the SOS tour, Septura, in Status of Victoria Septura. It was after that tour. I'm sitting there and wondering when practice is, and I'm in Lakeland and I'm calling, trying to reach Trevor. I'm trying to reach John or Donald. I think was trying to reach the pad there, calling the practice duplex, and couldn't reach anybody. And I was like, well, man, this is our regular practice day. I usually get confirmation that it's definitely happening.
Right.
Before I drive all the way out there, but can't reach anybody. And I was just like, well, I don't want to not show up to practice. That wouldn't be cool.
Right.
So
right.
I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go and be prepared to practice. And so I show up and I can hear the band like It sounded like warming up. It didn't sound like full on playing. It just sort of sounded like warming up.
Yeah.
Some guitar by itself. And I thought it was Trevor, And Frankie's outside, and he sees me, and he gets this look on his face like, "Whoa, oh shit!" And he was just like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" And we're like, "Not much, just showing up to practice." He didn't say anything. And I would walk. He didn't know. I talked to him later about it, and he was like, "Dude, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know you were going to show up." I opened the door, and there's Alan. I think he's playing through my amp.
Lordy.
And I was like, "Oh, so this happened finally." I can't say like it was a surprise that day because I had no clue it was coming on that particular day.
Right.
But because I did have an idea that it could happen and might happen any time, that that I can't say that I was completely shocked.
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, well, you guys could have. I think my main reaction was like, you guys could have told me.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think would happen if you told me?
Yeah.
If you told me, I would have said, all right, yeah, you guys warned me that might happen. And I do have another project I'm working on. I already got, like 3 songs done, and so I'm just going to roll into that. That's what would have happened,
Yeah.
But I think they were just like unsure what was going to happen if they, when they told me. So I just found out by walking into practice and finding Alan Shannon and playing stuff.
And the next funny story, sort of, goes to I had met Cancer when they were mixing to the Gory End, and so I become friends with Carl Stokes.
Yeah,
and we actually would call each other from overseas every once in a while and just shoot the shit, and never got to see them live that I remember, other than in the studio, and that was it. And so then one day
I had honestly never heard him before. Called me.
He calls me one day. He's in the studio, and he says, "Yeah, mate, we got a guitarist that James Murphy." I'm like, wow, this dude's getting around. And
well, here's the weird thing about it is that I never joined Cancer. I was never a member of that band. I was called and asked to come in and do one guitar solo and to loan them my cabinet. Originally, I was called to loan them my cabinet and do one guitar solo. They needed a guitar cabinet. Now, of course, they had cabinets at Morristown.
Yeah.
They had Marshall cabinets back there at Morristown. Of course they did. But Morristown charged a la carte a daily fee for those, a daily rental.
Yeah.
So Scott, when he was working with these obscure small metal bands from all over, some of which went on to become big shot metal bands from all over. Cancer was relatively unknown at the time. They had the one album out, but they weren't huge by any stretch, but their label had decided to send them to Morristown to record. And so Scott would often call me and ask to borrow my cabinet for whatever band he was working for at the time. And I always let him, I let him use one. And I lived just up the road. I lived sort of behind University Square Mall at the time,
yeah.
So I would drive up there and, bring a cabinet, and it's like, man, they really want you to play a solo and, they want to borrow a cabinet. And, their label paid me a small fee for the solo. And so I did that. And I bought the cabinet and I met the guys and they were all, real cool and all that. And I played the solo and they listened to it. And then they went out and talked amongst themselves. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize I was going to be like, there's going to be the
band
judgment panel after the fact. There's going to be a judgment panel. I guess if they hate what I did, I remember thinking to myself, well, they paid me, so if they hate what I did, I'll do something else,
Yeah.
They obviously liked something about my playing. They heard it on Spiritual and Cause of Death, and that's why they wanted me to, to play something. play, but so if they don't like, I guess they didn't like it. I guess I'll do something else. And they came back, and Scott came back by himself, and he said, "Hey, so they just had a big talk amongst themselves, and I guess they initially were talking without John, then they wrote John in, John Walker, the singer, guitar player, who was going to be doing all the solos, because they were just a trio at the time.
Yeah.
And he explained to me that they liked that solo quite a bit. In fact, that they liked it so much that they wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing all the solos on the album. And I thought, well, work out the details. Yeah, I guess. I mean, but only if John is actually okay with it. Because if John's not okay with it, I don't want to be the cause of any problems. And they were like, no, they got John on board. There was a little bit of a discussion, but he's down for it. They've decided that they're going to get a second guitar player when they get back to England, and that guy's going to have to learn their solos wherever they get. And I was like, okay, and then the guys came in, they talked to me about it, and we shook hands. It was a deal, I was going to play. And so I'm recording my solos, and as I got done with my solos, they, I guess they had been talking amongst themselves again, and so they approached me and said, "Hey, we've got a tour coming up really soon. We don't know if we're going to be able to find somebody to be able to play your parts for the tour. I mean, we understand. We know you're working on your own project, but if you have any flexibility in your schedule, would you consider doing the tour? And if it helps, we'll throw a cherry on top. In addition to flying you over and paying you, we'll also fly over your girlfriend, and she can hang out with our girlfriends, and she can get a little vacation as well." And I was like, "Well, all right, that sounds pretty cool. Free trip to Europe for me and my girlfriend. Awesome." And this is going to be my only chance to take, my girlfriend to Europe with me. I mean, I was a death metal musician. I wasn't making take your girlfriend to Europe money. I went for it. But I made it clear I'm working on my project. And when I get back from this tour, that's what I'm going to carry on doing.
Yeah.
And because I've already been in discussions with Roadrunner about it, and my plans are set. I've been in other people's bands. I've done that twice. I want to do my own band now, and they were cool with it. And but then they had this idea, and this is what they said to me. They said, "Okay, well, we're going to go do photo shoots for the album." And I was like, "Cool, yeah, but since you've agreed to do the tour, we also want to make it a photo shoot for the tour. So our idea was, if you come with us on the photo shoot, we'll do two versions of each, photo setup we do. Every location, where we shoot, every angle we shoot, we'll do a version with you, a version without you, and then a version with you. So all the photos you see of me with cancer, there's versions of that with just the three of them.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. And what they told me was, this is, so the ones with you are for the tour posters and whatnot. The ones with just us three, that's for the album. That's how they sold it to me to go on this photo shoot.
Right.
So I went on the photo shoot. And sure enough, the album comes out with me. No hint of them, just a guess. My photo, my name listed as a band member. And ever since that happened, I've been having to tell people I was not a member of Cancer. Now, they did wrote me for another tour. They said, "Hey, man, we got another tour." They didn't offer to fly my girlfriend over this time. Which you knew that girl. It was Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer.
And anyway, they offered to just fly me over, and they offered me reasonable enough pay. I was having to, I needed to work, because I was working on music and all that stuff. And so I took it as a job. And they put it to me like that, just to go on the tour, and then I could go back and finish Disincarnate, and they would find somebody, and they promised. But at the end of that tour, they gave me a high pressure sales pitch to join the band as a permanent member, which I turned down, which upset the drummer mightily. So it was very uncomfortable the rest of the time that I was hanging out with them on that tour. Very uncomfortable, but I did come on home and get back to work on my Disincarnate. And it turned out that it was very fateful that they didn't offer to bring my girlfriend over that time because, of course, because of that, I left her at home. She was working as a waitress, and we had an apartment together, and she cheated on me with a cop, I think, while I was selling on that trip. Yeah, it was a cop, and so that ended that relationship.
Right.
And it was just that whole experience, because the way it ended with the high pressure salesmanship to get me to join the band, and then that combined with the coming home to a cheating girlfriend, having to kick her out of the house and move on with my life, it made that, like, the ending of that very, very bitter. But I did have a lot of good fun doing it.
Right. And then you did Disincarnate.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I had been working on those riffs since I was in Obituary. I think I was telling you,
Yeah.
Trevor asked me to play him those riffs, and I played them for him, after going to great pains to explain, like, this is not what I would write for Obituary. He listened to those riffs, and the first thing out of his mouth was, that doesn't sound anything like Obituary. It's like, I told you.
Right.
I told you that, like 10 times, And now, I think that he took, despite my labored effort, my effort to explain laboriously and meticulously explain, like, this is not how I would write for Obituary. This is how I write for me by myself. He took that, me playing those riffs, and sounded nothing like Obituary, to mean somehow that I couldn't write in Obituary style. I was never given a chance, which is fine. Things work out the way they work out, for reasons. And
right.
But it was just a funny story. But yeah, then I did the Disincarnate album finally.
How'd you gather those musicians?
It was an interesting experience, I guess. I knew that I had a large pool of musicians to choose from in the Tampa Bay area. A lot of guys with experience. A lot of guys that had done albums, that had done tours, who knew what time it was. You know what I mean? That I wasn't going to have to handhold, babysit, teach, or anything like that. I knew that. But I was also thinking, these are guys that I don't know how the band is going to do. I have no idea whether I have confidence. I have hope. I'm willing. I'm plunging forward. I'm taking that dive into the darkness to see what happens. But I don't know how it's going to turn out. It's not written in stone that it's going to be successful. So, do I get guys that have wives and kids and jobs and experience and all this stuff, because they're older and they have experience, they've made records, they've toured, and have to deal with, like, because they would need X amount of money that I didn't know I could deliver, because I didn't know how well we would do, or do I need to find young guys, inexperienced guys who probably still live at home, who aren't going to have rent and aren't going to have to send money back for bills, so that in case we shit, they can roll with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, during the course of trying to decide which way to go, I went and auditioned a lot of people. And I'm not going to name names, but I auditioned a long list of known musicians who wanted to audition for the gig. Of known musicians who had already made records then, and who to this day, many of them are still around and have made even more records. That people know and dig from the Tampa scene. But and some of the people that auditioned have moved on. So I'm not going to name names. But
yeah.
I auditioned all these guys, and there always seemed like there was an agenda. One of the bands was like, okay, cool. So if this works out, our idea is that we come in, we'll just be your band. We'll just be in a band together, and we'll have it'll be your record contract will now just be our record contract. And instead of Disincarnate, we'll call the band our band name. And I'm just like, yeah, no.
Right.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not just like, even if I had the power to just give you my contract and now it could just be your band that you could easily fire me from, before we even recorded the record, and you can just take over my record contract. If it even worked like that, I wouldn't do it. And it doesn't work like that.
Well, Disincarnate was your vision. So
it was my vision, but what they wanted to do was just have them be the band and take over the record contract, but then just call the band their band name. And I was like, no. That was one band, and that, but there was little stories like that, similar to that, and everybody that I auditioned that with. And you know what? I'm still friends with most of all of these guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or at the very least, still cordial acquaintances, because I maybe never spent a lot of time with them over the years.
Right.
But so that's another reason why I'm not naming names. There's no point in it. But I decided to pass on that. I didn't want anything to do with anything of that vibe. This is my record deal, and I'm not going to have someone coming in and thinking they're taking over. And I'm also don't want to deal with musicians who, I have to, get $500 this week, or I'm going to have to go home, and go back to work. I'm like, hey, I would understand. I know all about paying bills. I get it. But I can't have that happen.
Right.
I need a band that's going to be able to roll with it if things get rough. Because we're a new band. Yes, I have a quote unquote name, but that and 50 cents back then would give me a cup of coffee at Awful House.
Yeah.
So that's why I decided that I was going to pick young guys that weren't jaded. That young guys that were good at what they did, but were young, youthful in it. And I was youthful. I was only in my, mid-20s at that point. I was like 24, 20. So
still young.
So still young. But I'm talking about I got guys who were like 18, 17.
Oh,
18,
gotcha. Yeah.
Really young guys who weren't even old enough to drink.
Wow.
But they were good.
Gotcha.
They were good at what they did. And now Tommy came along, the drummer. He was a little older and a little more experienced. Tommy, I think I met through Pat of Hellwitch. I think I met him through a mutual Pat from Hellwitch connection.
Yeah, nice.
Rest in peace. We lost Tommy this past month, and it was just awful.
Right.
My condolences definitely to anybody and everybody who knew him and to his family, of course, the surviving family.
During the Disincarnate days, I actually hung out with Tomas a lot. So.
Old Toe. Yeah, he was great. We used to, it was all very good natured. We all laughed about it. Tommy thought it was funny too. Because at that time, the cast on Saturday Night Live was back when, Adam Sandler was newish in the cast.
Yeah.
And he did all those characters like Opera Man and Cajun Man.
Yeah.
And anybody who knew Tomas, Tommy Theodore, knows that he was very much, from that region of Louisiana with a very strong sort of Cajun-y type, Louisiana accent. And
almost foreign.
So we would always, so we used to call him Cajun Man, and it was just a funny thing, because it was all good natured and we called him Cajun Man, and we would do mock interviews with him like the Cajun Man, like Kevin Nealon would do on on the SNL update or whatever, and get him to say words that end in TION so that he could overpronounce it and sound really Cajun.
Yeah.
They'd be like, so, Tomas, what is your favorite band? He'd be like, Immolation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool. What's your favorite band? Immolation. And it was just fun we had with him. And yeah, he was a good guy, man. He was a really good guy, and it's awful what happened to him.
Right.
He had, for anyone that doesn't know, he had undiagnosed heart disease, and it just got him one day. You know, he had never had it diagnosed. So,
right.
Especially you start getting into about our age, you know, and
Yep.
really, you're never too young to go in and get your heart health checked out and to keep an eye on throughout your life.
Very true. So, okay, Disincarnate came out. You did the whole recording at Morse Sound and
we did a demo at Morse Sound. Yeah,
demo, and then you recorded. Where did you record that at?
In Wales, UK.
Okay.
With Colin Richardson.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I think it really upset the upper brass at Morris Sound. You know, Scotty ultimately kind of rolled with it. I think he was feeling the pressure a bit for a little while. I don't want to speak for Scotty. Me and him are still, great friends. You know, Scotty's one of the most awesome people ever, and I love him. And I think like Jim and Tom, we're not, the Morrises were not necessarily so happy. I think they thought they were going to get that record, and they didn't. But they, the demo was paid for, so it was well within Roadrunner's purview to send me off to England to do it, and I ultimately agreed to it. I resisted at first because I really wanted to do it with Scotty. Every record I had done to that point, whether it was a full length record or whether I was just did a minor guest spot, every recording I had ever done had been with Scotty, and so it was a little scary for me to go do something without Scotty, and it made me very self-conscious of how Scotty would feel about it. I was I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I certainly didn't want any feelings to be hurt, and but Monty assured me he would take care of it, and then it was written in stone. I had to do it. That's what the word was from on high.
Gotcha.
Roadrunner as a company was getting a little bit off. They were already headed towards off the idea of death metal bands, period, at that time.
Yeah.
Because grunge was coming out and hitting hard.
Yeah.
And so they definitely were moving off their habit of using more sound repeatedly. And to the detriment of quite a few albums of bands on Roadrunner, no less, who did come on. The very next Malevolent Creation album, the very next Suffocation album after they quit working at Morris Sound.
Yep.
Both of them, production-wise, they're great albums musically, but production-wise, they left a lot to be desired compared to the Morris Sound production schedule. Stop burn production schedule.
So,
and
so you recorded over there. Gotcha. So I do want to talk about Testament and how that came about.
Sure. We went out and did the Disincarnate tour, of course, and it was very rough. Mostly, not so much because of turnout. Turnouts were okay. Turnouts ranged from really good. Who
did you record tour with Disincarnate?
Well, it started out Cancer, but Cancer bailed. Cancer bailed as soon as we started having vehicle problems. And that was the bane of that tour. The bane of that tour was awful routing, and I'm sure you know all about awful routing, what that means. The average, the layperson, listening to this might not know, how routing affects a tour. But if your tour is routed well, it's like not that far from one city to the next. You're not crisscrossing. You move in sort of a logical flow around the country. You're not back, crossing back over your steps again, going back in an area you were in before, or through an area to get to another area that you already, it had been through, before, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't have huge, crazy, and translate that to expensive in terms of time and finances, drives between gigs. But yeah, so that's what constitutes, good routing is,
I see a lot of that in Europe.
It was, yeah, it was awful routing. And, you don't want to see gaps between shows together. I mean, it was killing us. The routing was killing us. But, we went out, we made a little bit of money, but between the vehicles breaking down and all the money we had to spend on the bus and then the bands and then the blah, 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 and cancer tapped out. It just killed them financially, and they tapped out. And we carried on up until the last 3 shows, which were out in California. Only 2 of them were confirmed. One of them wasn't confirmed. And so a lot of local promoters will reserve the right to confirm after they sold X amount of tickets.
Yeah.
Confirm with the booking agent. And so one of them wasn't confirmed. And we had a week off at home in Tampa. And so it was just ludicrous. We were home, and we were going to have to go to a huge expense to get another vehicle drive all the way out to California for 2 shows.
Wow.
Maybe 3, but, And then while we were waiting, while the booking agent was trying to tell us, you have to do these shows, you have to do them, the one show that was unconfirmed, canceled. And we're just like, we just can't afford to do it. We just don't have the money. You need to use your credit card. Like, I don't have a credit card like that.
Yeah.
I've never had, like, at that point in my life, I'd never had a credit card.
Yeah.
I had a debit card, from the bank, that's it. So we didn't do it. And as soon as we didn't do those shows, I never heard from a booking agent again. They would never answer the phone for me again.
Gotcha.
It was TCI, Mitch Carduno, yeah. TCI. And we never heard from him again. You do not, and let that be a cautionary tale to you again. You sign on to do a tour, by hook or by crook, you finish that tour.
Yeah.
Because you will find yourself without a booking agent with a quickness. Unless you somehow manage to blow up huge after that, in which case every booking agent will be coming after you with offers. But so that's what happened. We had no booking agent. I started talking to Roadrunner. I was like, man, I was telling Monty, like, we're just going to start writing the next record, And Monty was like, well, we're not really sure we're going to exercise the option.
Yeah.
I mean, the album's selling okay. It's not not huge numbers or anything. It's doing okay, but that's no sort of on the decline, man. And we're getting rid of a lot of our bands, and and one of the things Monty said at the time was that he wanted to hear the singer, Brian, step it up a notch, take it to another level, add some more dimension to his voice. It turned out, Brian did his thing really, 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 really well, but especially at the time, back then he was so young, it was very one-dimensional. I recorded him for another project more recently, and he's got, he demonstrated a lot more chops in that regard, a little bit more level, that he could take it to, but a little bit more dimension. But back then Monty wasn't sure. He wanted to move forward. He wanted to hear the songs. He wanted to hear the vocals. And he wanted to see if we were going to be able to get him in a booking agent. And so it was very, very discouraging. We were languishing. I ended up having to give up my apartment because I lost my job at Aces Records. When we went over to record, Aces, Frank at Aces had always given me my job back. He was always happy to let me go on tours, record albums, whatever, and I always had my job back. But when I went over to Wales, we had an incident in the store shortly before I left to go record the album, where I think it was a combination of things. I think it was a little bit this one incident where we had a shoplifter come in, and he had like 3 or 4 cassettes he was trying to steal. And I stopped him, and he tried to deny it, and I wasn't really allowed to touch people or do anything like that. Even back then, you couldn't just go and grab somebody or do anything. But I was determined that I had never lost anything. The way we had our inventory set up, we knew that we weren't losing inventory because we could look and see if a cassette was missing from the rack because we kept it full. So if a cassette was missing, it meant it was in someone's hands, and as soon as they would sell, we would replace it from the rack. So I could see that 3 or 4 cassettes were missing, and he was getting ready to leave, and it was like, hey, bud, where are those cassettes? And it's like, there's no, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, oh, no, it's no big deal, man. It's just, you took some stuff out. Wherever you set them down, it's fine. You set them down somewhere, just let me know so I can go put them back. It's just like, I didn't touch any cassettes. All I knew he had, he was the only one in the store. And I was just like, hey, man, just give me the cassette. And it turned into a whole thing where I ended up telling him, because he was behind some of the racks. I said, I ended up telling him, by the time I get from behind this counter to where you're standing, you better have set those cassettes down and left. Basically an implied threat.
Right.
And then I started headed that way. Well, he reached into his shirt, put the cassettes down and left. But he also called Frank the next day and said, I was just in there trying to shop. And your employee, my boss here, he got mad at me and, told me to leave, or he was going to, beat my ass. Which I did not say, but, he got his revenge on me.
Wow.
And so I got in trouble for that, but I didn't get fired for it. I continued on working. And, but you combine that with the fact that I was gone for a pretty extended time for recording the Disincarnate album, and he had gotten Melissa in. You remember Melissa?
Oh, yeah.
Ended up married to Bo King. Yeah, Bo King's wife. Yeah, she came in, and he really liked her. She was really good.
This is on Fowler, yeah.
She was good at her job. Yeah, she was good at her job, and he didn't want to. Fair enough, he didn't want to replace her. She maybe had more, different reported customers than me. I had fine reported customers. I had plenty of customers that loved me, but she was just really good at her job, and he felt bad to let her go just to take me back when I was the guy who left all the damn time.
Yeah,
and I was the guy who had someone say that I threatened to beat him up in the store, even though I didn't. So it was an easy choice for Frank. He's like, James, I'm just, just the way he put it to me was, it seems like your career's going well, and I really don't want to let Melissa go. She's really good. I really like her. And I was like, all right. So
right.
I didn't have a job, and so I moved back to Lakewood. Didn't have a job. I did the band's future was uncertain. So I moved back to Lakewood. And that's where I was, staying at my mom's house again. And I ended up having to go get a job at a warehouse. I was like, because I went to go, teach guitar, but all the positions in town were full. I was going to have to wait until someone quit and moved on, And there wasn't the opportunity, you couldn't do online lessons back then. So I went and got a job at a warehouse. And I was doing that. And, me and Tommy, we kept the Disincarnate rehearsal space, and me and Tommy and Brian went out there a few times, and we wrote some stuff for a second Disincarnate record. And it was just a miserable time where we weren't sure whether we still had a record deal or not. I was having to live back in Lakeland, and it was a long drive, 3 or 4 nights a week. It was awful, And all of a sudden, I get a phone call. at my mom's house, and it was like, "Hey, James, my kidder." That's how he talked real fast and short and first like that. "Hey, James, my kidder." Like, "Oh, hey, Mike." And Mike Kidder's a guy that I knew as a journalist. He had interviewed Death when I was in Death. He had interviewed Obituary when I was in Obituary. He had interviewed Cancer while I was working Cancer. And so, I had done interviews with Mike a number of times. And he even had done a story on Disincarnate when we first got together. Came out with a photographer, took a picture of us on the steps of my apartment, and did a little write-up on it in the lead-up to the album coming out. But now it's just a matter of months later. Several months later, he calls me, and I'm like, "Oh, what's up, Mike?" And I was like, "Hey, man, what do you want to interview me? Because I don't have anything going on right now. We're sort of in a limbo at the moment. We're trying to write." And he goes, "No. I'm calling you because I work at Atlantic Records now. I'm A&R at Atlantic Records." I was like, "Oh, shit, congratulations, man." I thought he was just calling me to tell me, "Hey, I got a new job. This is where I'm at." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome, man. Very cool. Thanks for letting me know. That's really cool." He goes, "No, I got question for you. And I was like, okay, what's the question? And he goes, well, one of the bands that I rep as A&R is Testament. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Testament's like on Atlantic. That's right. They've been there on Atlantic for a while. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, how would you feel about playing guitar for Testament? I'm like, in lieu of who? At that point, I knew Alex had left, but I thought he had been replaced by Glenn Outlet from Forbidden. And he was for a minute, but I didn't know that it was temporary. You know, they were looking for a permanent replacement. And I didn't know that. And he said, how would you feel about being that guy? I was like, I love Testament. I feel pretty damn awesome out there. You know?
Right.
And he was like, okay, well, start learning songs. You figure out what their set list is. Start learning songs, you know, from the most recent set list. And we'll I'll get back with you. And Eric is going to call you in a couple of days. I'm going to give you your phone number. I think, okay, cool. I'll be here. I'll be right here. And Eric called me later that same day, and he was just like, "Yeah, we're already writing the new album. We got a big chunk of it done. And I got a song. I want to hear you come up with a solo and record it for me." And I was like, "Yeah, shit. Well, I have to go to Morristown or something or somewhere and book some time to do a solo." And he goes, "No, look, I just did it on a 4-track, and he named the model and 4-track he had." And I was like, "Oh, I have that same 4-track recorder now. I had the same one." He was like, "Oh, cool. Well, this is easy then. I'll make a 2-track bounce of it, left and right stereo, and you'll have 2 tracks to use to come up with a solo and any harmonies for it you want, and send it back to me." So he FedExed me a 4-track cassette with the song "Dog Face Gods" on it. And he told me where to play, the time marker to play. I scooted up to that point, and I sat there, and I came up with a solo, and I recorded it. And then this is the way, you couldn't send someone an MP3 back then. So I packed it back up, and I used the Testament FedEx number to send it right back to them. And they loved it. And they were like, "Dude, it's killer. We're going to fly you out. If you can do stuff like that, like every time, for every song, then, you got this good stuff. The only thing that remains to be seen is, can you play Alex's solo, like note for note? Because to get this gig, those solos are part of the song. Fans expect to hear them. So you need to play you need to see that you can play his stuff. You can learn it and play it. So we don't know it, so we don't even know how to show it to you. So you have to learn it on your own, and you have to be able to play it convincingly." And I was like, "I'm 100% confident we can do it." He gave me the set list. And then I hung up the phone. I was just like, I'm not 100% confident I can do it. It was very much another Bernie Versailles situation where I had to step up. And in the process of stepping up, I leveled up a little bit,
Yeah.
And I did. I learned the solos note for note. And they flew me out there, did the audition, got the gig.
Wow.
It was really cool.
Isn't it ironic that Alex came to Sabotage and you went to Testament?
I remember thinking that at the time. I was like, "Oh my God, I moved to California. Is he moving to Florida? He had Sabotage?" I didn't know it was going to be a one and done thing for him, like a studio gig. I didn't know that. No one really knew that at the time. But
it's just ironic. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you got the gig.
Oh.
And you contributed it.
I did. I got the gig. Yeah. I had, the majority of the record was written, but I had the opportunity to contribute to a bit of songwriting.
A lot of people believe that once you joined Testament and the Low came out, that it got heavier. Testament got heavier.
Well, that's definitely true, but it wasn't necessarily because of me. It wasn't, their getting heavier wasn't necessarily so much a result of me as getting me was a step they took because they wanted to go heavier. They were planning on it. It was already, they were already writing heavier music. Dog Face God's one of the heaviest songs on that album, and it was written before they ever picked me.
Gotcha.
But that was the song they sent to me to like do my first solo on to see if they liked the direction I was going to take it, and they did, fortunately. They knew they were going heavier, so they knew they needed somebody that would fit that direction.
Gotcha.
And I fit that. I fit that direction.
Hell yeah. And then you said you kind of took a break from Testament on one album.
Well, we did the Low album, and we did a bunch of touring for it, and then we did another tour that culminated in a couple of live shows at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and we did had a remote truck out there, and we did the live album live at the Fillmore, and then we toured in support of that quite a bit as well. Then we had downtime, and I used that downtime to accept a production job because I was already working in production, doing production and engineering. A band from Denmark called Konkra, Konkhra, I believe is the spelling, if I remember after all these years.
Yes.
They contacted me from Denmark and were going to be, doing their new album and wanted me to work with them on it. And they were going to be having Chris Kontos on drums and the whole nine. So I flew over to Denmark and did that album with them. And I accepted the task to, play all the solos as well as a, on the album. But once again, I didn't really join them full time, but I did end up doing a lot of extensive work with them. So I produced the album and I played solos on it, and then I did tours with them. And while I was doing that, Testament came off break, and it turns out that and I was over in Europe, so they even tried to, I don't even remember now the timeline exactly, but I just remember I was in Denmark and working with Konkra when they decided to get to write and record an album. And I don't know if they ever had an intention to get me on it, but because if you listen to that album, it's a very heavy album, but it doesn't really have any guitar solos. It's got a couple of little melodies here and there, but there's no proper guitar solos on it.
Right. Yeah.
And what it was is that Eric just kind of went through a phase at that time where he just felt that guitar solos in metal was passe and you didn't need them so much,
Right. There were a lot of bands. There's a lot of bands that didn't do solos and on albums.
Yeah. Yeah. Back in the mid to late 90s. Yeah. And so that album, Demonic, was the one where Eric sort of decided, I don't really want to have like a lead guitar player.
Interesting.
So much. I think that they had either Glenn Avelice or Steve Smythe like play a little something in one spot on that album, but they didn't have someone playing solos on every song at all.
Right. Yeah.
It was just something. I think you got a lot of quote unquote heavy bands, didn't have solos. Most of those were thought of as sort of new metal, to be honest. But
yeah.
Chuck, and not Chuck, but Eric, definitely was feeling that Testament didn't really need to have solos anymore, per se,
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I was gone over in Europe, and so they just did the album. They just did it with no solos,
Gotcha.
And so I just kept myself busy with production and, mixing and recording various bands and doing my, solo albums and all that. And eventually it came time to do The Gathering for them in 1999. And, they got Dave Lombardo on drums, and they decided they wanted solos again. So they called me and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I accepted, and so there you go.
Hell yeah. And then that would be The Gathering.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is another killer album.
Yeah, it is. It's a great one.
And so I guess you did the whole touring and everything on that.
Yeah, I did the first leg of the touring for The Gathering, but here's the problem with The Gathering. It was 1999 and into 2000 as we were working on that. And that's when I started having massive symptoms from the tumor that nearly took me out.
Right.
I became very forgetful. I became very unreliable because of becoming forgetful. And basically my life started falling apart because I didn't know that I had a medical issue that needed to be addressed. I didn't know that I needed surgery. I didn't know I was getting closer and closer to death. You know, I had no idea. And they didn't either. And, you know, to their, they recognized something was wrong, but like pretty much everyone else, including members of my own family, they thought I had gotten on drugs for some reason, even though they knew me to not be a guy that did drugs. They thought that I must have had done stuff, you know?
Right.
And, but, you know, eventually it came to light that I had a tumor, you know, some months down the line. And then everything was sort of explained and everyone understood, you know, but by then, you know, I was not useful to anyone. I lost everything and ended up homeless and back in Florida eventually in 2001, where after about 5 months after being back, the tumor got diagnosed and I was scheduled for surgery. And then that's when my life started turning back around. But, you know, to Testament's defense, they didn't know what was wrong with me. So they really the only choice they could at the time, which was to, you know, part ways. They said, look, man, you know, whatever you got going on, you know, get it sorted, you know?
Yeah.
You're not the James we knew.
Right.
You know, the James we knew was at least, you know, on his game all the time, and you're not anymore. Something's wrong, you know?
Yeah. They recognized, they just didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Didn't know what it was. And, you know, neither did I or anyone in my family or anything, you know?
Right.
Everyone sort of assumed the same thing, was that somehow I had gotten on drugs.
Which is a crazy idea because you weren't that guy.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely not that guy.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what was the surgery exactly? How did that work?
Well, I was back here in Florida for about 5 months. The whole way I got here was a crazy story in and of itself. I was homeless in the Bay Area. I had lost everything. Tons of my belongings.
You had a studio there too.
Yeah, I had a fully working studio, you know, commercial studio that was running full time, you know? And, all right.
So you had,
be better.
So you had a full studio and
yeah, lost everything. It all got stolen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up homeless, and my sister knew something was wrong with me. She didn't know whether it was drugs or what. She probably thought that as well, but she didn't care. She wanted me to get back to Florida. So she sent me bus ticket money like a couple of times until finally I got on one of them and made it back to Florida. And then I ended up basically just couch surfing and then being homeless here because, you know, no one knew what was wrong with me. They all thought my dad actually had everyone convinced I was on drugs, even though he drug tested me multiple times, like about 5 times he drug tested me, always negative. Eventually my sister saved me yet again. She picked me up off the street after about 5 months and, took me to she didn't have a way to put me up at the time. And, you know, but she took me to a motel, booked me into it, and then called my dad and I think basically threatened to disown him if he didn't come pick me up and get me seen to.
Right. And
that worked. He came and picked me up and, you know, he took me to the doctor, and all they did was say, well, you know, you got some reflux, you know, here's some Zantac, you know. And they scheduled me to be checked out by a therapist, you know, a psychiatrist or something. I don't remember whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever. One of those things. And, you know, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I love my dad and I get along great with him. And I'm actually about to head to his house once we're done. I love my father, you know, and we get along awesome, but he, you know, he was difficult. And, you know, so he basically told me I'm going to register as an indigent with county health, give you free health care. And I'm going to take you, you know, I noticed you're having trouble reading because I was trying to read the newspaper at his house and I was not being able to see it well. And he said, so I'm going to take you and get you some off-the-shelf reading glasses. And so that you can at least, you obviously can't do what you were doing. You can't play guitar or do any of that stuff anymore. So you're going to at least need to be able to flip burgers, we'll get you in some affordable housing.
Right. Yeah.
With government grant and rent control and, get you self-sufficient,
Yeah.
So he was trying to do all that. But I was trying to tell him, I only remember bits and pieces of this stuff, but I do remember trying to tell him, Dad, whatever, and you got to understand, I was a 34-year-old man at this point, grown, and had been living on my own for years and had a successful business and career,
Yep.
And, but I lost it all because of this tumor, and so I'm trying to tell him that whatever it is that's causing all my other problems, it's the same thing. It happened my eyesight problems happened concurrently with it. And he got really aggravated with me for saying that. Like, no. You're a Murphy male. You lucked out. You didn't have to wear glasses until your 30s. The rest of us all had to have glasses in our 20s. Get over yourself. It's not the same. It's nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
It's just your time for your eyes. It's just,
wow.
Okay. And so he took me to that county health appointment, and then he took me by a little place called World in Lakeland, right there, probably right off US 98 North. And you're familiar.
Yeah.
And there was only one guy in there. He was probably an optician, definitely not an ophthalmologist, an optician working at an eyeglass place.
Yeah.
And me and my dad were the only other people in there, and he was having me try on these off-the-shelf reading glasses. And I kept trying to, you read see if you can read the little small print sample,
Yeah.
And I tried on several different strengths, and I was trying to tell my dad, look, it doesn't matter which ones I try on. Sure, with the part of my eyes through which I can actually see, some of these glasses, like, enhance that a little bit. I can read, the text looks bigger or whatever through there. But there's parts of my vision that I can't see through. It's like it's for the lens to be of any benefit. It's like there's Vaseline smeared on my eyes, like unevenly and different spots, and I couldn't see through that. And he was getting aggravated with me. He thought I was malingering, trying to get out of filling out a McDonald's application,
Yeah.
He was really, really upset with me. And, but the optician overheard the conversation, and he, came over and said, hey, I couldn't help but hear you. And I would just like to give you an eye exam. It's free, and free is my dad's favorite word. It's
everybody's favorite word.
Everybody's favorite word. My dad really particularly loved it.
Right.
So did me a free eye exam, and they did that thing, where they look at it with that cone shape, like really bright light.
Yeah.
And they call it looking at the back of your eye.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had some kind of eye exam.
Yep.
They're looking at the back of your eye, right through your center of your eye. And he examined me for about 30 seconds. He was like, wait, and he just stopped. And after about 30 seconds, he said, Mr. Murphy, I'm sorry to inform you that it's my opinion, and you'll need to see an ophthalmologist to confirm, but in my opinion, you have an extremely large pituitary tumor pressing on your optic nerve from behind. That is causing your visual disturbance.
Wow.
And it's going to be not just at this size. It's not just pressing on your optic nerve. It's putting massive pressure on your brain as well. So right there in one fell swoop, it explained everything, all tied up in one little bow. My dad stood there silent. He's already a pale guy. He turned about 3 shades whiter, Well, he gets some, but you know what I mean? He looked really pale at that moment. Yeah. And I didn't find out for months why. He looked like he saw a ghost. And it's because, see, my dad is a veteran, 22 years in service, and he's also took a half retirement, like a 10-year retirement from the Florida corrections system. So he has really amazing health care, all covered. And so he gets regular checkups, all kinds of blood panels all the time. He's on top of this stuff. I was a musician living way out in California, not able to afford any of that.
Right.
And so I didn't have any of that. Well,
My dad, just 3 months prior to that guy saying, you have a huge pituitary tumor that's pressing on your optic nerve in your brain, he had been diagnosed with a tiny little pituitary tumor that he was told that if it hadn't been caught, it could have grown to be big enough to press on his optic nerve and brain, causing him all kinds of problems and ultimately death.
Wow.
But his had gotten found when it was the size of a pea, and all he ever had to do was take the medication. The same medication I ultimately had to start taking after the surgery. So that's all he ever had to do, because it's controllable with this medication. They are not malignant tumors. They are fully encapsulated benign tumors, but they will kill you just by their sheer size that they can grow to, and then what they'll wrap themselves around, such as your carotid artery in your head, and putting pressure on your brain, and they'll blind you by putting pressure on your optic nerve, all of that. And so once that was discovered, my dad actually stepped up. Months later, he said, "I have the same tumor." I was like, "Well, my dad, I love him, but the guy never tells me when something happens with him health-wise.
Yeah.
I have to find out about it through a situation like that, which is awful, or when he's literally about to go in to get triple bypass surgery. Oh, you have an issue with your heart? I'm your son, right? I have at least 50% of your damn genes. You need to tell me when shit goes wrong with you so that I can go get it checked out, dude."
Yeah. Yeah. True.
He's a great guy. My dad's awesome, but he's always been terrible about stuff like that. So when that eye guy at the eye clinic or whatever, told you that, it was like relief. It was just like a world.
It was a relief, but also holy shit.
Very, very scary, because I knew I was going to have surgery to my head. So I didn't know how invasive it would be. I didn't know, really. I found out later but you got to understand, I was becoming more and more and more in an almost childlike state.
Gotcha.
My memory would come and go. My vision was failing. I was falling apart. So it all became kind of like a whirlwind that, just like he said, they got me in to see an ophthalmologist right away who confirmed the optician's diagnosis. And they immediately got me set up with neurosurgery. Now, the reason why I was able to get my surgery, my particular pituitary tumor, because I had no insurance, but I actually got excellent care at one of the top clinics for this kind of thing in Florida, Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa.
Yeah. Because
they are, in addition to being a very prestigious cancer center, and we deal also with non-cancerous tumors like these, any sort of neurosurgery. It's neurosurgery is what it boils down to. They are, just top flight place, but they're also a teaching hospital where doctors in training go to finish their doctorates and all that stuff, finish their all the stuff they have to do to become doctors and become neurosurgeons and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So because of that, my case was so unique because of how big it got that
wow,
they gave me the surgery. I mean, a bill was generated. It was absolutely massive, but I never had to pay the bill for the actual surgery. I had to pay a lot of related bills.
Yeah.
But the bill for the nearly $250,000 of it, that was just that surgery. I never really had to pay.
Crazy.
So that was very lucky, very fortunate. So it's weird to say I was fortunate that it was that bad. Isn't that weird to say?
Yeah.
Because it could have been a lot less bad. And ostensibly, there's a $5 word for you. Ostensibly.
You're talking above my Alabama education.
No, I bust out some vocabulary from time to time. I've been known to do that. And there's always someone in a band, that you're playing with, that it makes them mad because they think you're trying to act like a smarty pants or something. I don't know. I just read a lot and I know the words.
You ain't gonna make me mad. So,
anyway, ostensibly, or it would appear that was good luck to be smaller. But had mine been smaller, I might not have gotten that surgery at all.
Right. And how did they
I might have had a much rougher time of it.
How did they go in there and remove that? That's always fascinating to me.
Well, first of all, they used two routes. The first one, they completely removed the left side of my face.
What?
And what I mean by that is they made an incision at my left temple. It followed the orbit of my eye, down the crease of the left side of my nose, and around and underneath and down through the center of my upper lip.
Wow.
And then they peeled my face back.
Oh.
And then they literally cut my cheekbone out and removed it.
Wow.
And then they cut my sinus, I think on the the side closest to the nose. They cut it and moved it aside. And then they went in underneath the orbit of my left eye to attack the tumor that way. They also split my soft palate right down the middle.
Jesus.
And went in through the roof of my mouth. So they went two routes to get it. And they still only they estimated about 70 some odd % of the tumor. But from there, the pharmacological, bombardment, had a much better chance of working, which it did.
How long was that surgery?
I don't know. It was hours upon hours upon hours. I honestly have no memory of it.
Right.
They counted me down into some pins. Probably I was unconscious by 8 or 7. And the next thing I remember was sort of being heart rate conscious as they wheeled me out of the operating theater.
Yeah.
Past the hallway that led down to the waiting room where like my mother was. And they paused specifically so that she could see me conscious. Right. And I could wave at her. And then they took me to recovery. And I was there in recovery, for 3 or 4 days. And then they told me that my full recovery would take, up to a year, to really fully get back all my motor skills, get back, I couldn't play guitar at all. I had no motor skills to play guitar. And pressing on the strings felt like razor blades going into my fingers.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't from having lost calluses. That was some kind of neuropathic, symptoms.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah, very crazy.
That's amazing story. Jesus Christ, man. Had no idea.
I survived.
That. Woo. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Survived with a vengeance.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's
like, hey, I said it early in the interview. I'm stubborn.
Yeah. Good for you for being that way. Well, and actually going back to one of your old bands, Obituary, they did something special for you to help raise money. And I hope that raised some money for you.
They did. I think in the end, it raised a couple of grand, and that was very, 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 very helpful. And I super appreciated it.
That's one thing about those guys. They do care about everyone, they do.
Yeah. I've gone to a few of Don's Metal Militia events over the years, and always show up, bring a bag or two of food,
Yeah.
Buy tickets
and a lot of the community here, they support all these benefits that I actually host almost all of them. And which is, I love doing that.
Dude, you're a fixture in the scene here, Dave. You're a
well, I just I like to help.
Everybody knows you.
I explain it to everybody. I just happen to have friends that were in bands that did amazing things, and I don't know what to tell you. It's just, we became, all these people that I'm friends with, we became friends.
Yeah, well,
we're just,
and you could have just been that guy that just always just hung out and partied, but you decided to also be the guy that pitched in and helped with things.
Yes, promoted
and help organize things, promote things, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah. I've always wanted to help I always wanted to help my friends, and especially I enjoy the benefits to help my friends in a time of need, if you will, and which
Absolutely.
is Curtis. I do the medal for the military, which we haven't done in a while. The Metal Meow List Show, which you spoke of a minute ago. And we've done 2 Curtis benefits, and the first one was a fucking phenomenal turnout. Everybody and their brother that was of any stature was there, even Chris Jericho, and just so many people. It was awesome. But anyways, so yeah, good metal community here. And I can't say that they were all tight knit way back in the day, but they definitely are now. And it's just
the Tampa scene was weird back in the day, and I remember when I went to California, it was when I joined Testament to California, it was a culture shock, because I was like, wow, all the bands here seem to like be friends and like each other and help each other out. It wasn't really like that in Tampa. It is like that in Tampa now. Everyone's cool. Everyone grew up and got over the old nonsense. And matured.
Yes, that's true.
But it was definitely interesting back in the day, an interesting dynamic between a lot of bands. Not every band had problems with every other band, but there was definitely things going on in the scene. It was, not exactly super tight knit always.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. But so, what I don't know if people know this, you still have a working studio where you're at now. And you do a lot. I mean, let me tell everybody, you have been a part of a guest on, I would say, around 60 bands, guest appearances.
Probably more, Dave.
Probably more. Holy fuck.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the word probably and say absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, I've done 10 just in the last few months.
Holy shit.
At least 10, yeah. Like recent stuff, the band Becoming from LA, the band Cruelty from LA, the band Doomraiser from Rome, Italy, the band Internal Suffering from Colombia, the band Just Before Dawn from Sweden. I mean, that's just a couple right now. I got the band Hatzerock, which I can't remember where they're from. Hatzerock's coming up, Crypt Crawler, stuff like that.
Wow. And not to mention all the bands you have done recording, mixing, producing, mastering. Holy shit, that list is amazing too, man. Holy fuck.
Yeah, done a lot.
I can't even
starting with COVID.
Yeah.
When COVID came around, that work started to thin out quite a bit. And I had been at that point 20 years with my nose to the grindstone, producing, mixing, and mastering stuff. And but what also happened right at the beginning of COVID was I paid off my house. And
nice.
Because I had done a 15-year mortgage, and I worked my butt off for that 15 years producing. That's why that's why I disappeared into the studio. And it's just, the people who don't pay attention to the credits, they probably thought I disappeared altogether. But, when you look at credits of things, James is around. He's doing a lot of work, And so I paid off my house. And that happened right at the beginning of COVID. And so as I'm getting my deed and, all that stuff, getting all that stuff completed and I'm realizing, okay, the work's thinning out, and I started panicking about it. I was just like, this damn pandemic thing is going to, ruin me financially. And then I stopped and thought, oh wait, I don't have that big ass monthly pop anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to work as hard. I can take it a little easier.
Yeah.
And so I actually started playing more guitar and taking it easy. And as I was playing guitar, I started getting a few more offers than normal to do like session guitar work. I've always gotten, ever since I started, I've gotten offers to do session guitar work, and I've done it pretty much my whole career. And but now I've been getting a pretty big raft of it, and I've been really enjoying that. instead of spending hours just sitting in front of a computer with a mouse and a scroll wheel and what have you, and a jog shuttle wheel, and editing and recording and mixing and blah 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 for hours on end. I now kick back with my guitar. That's what I've been doing pretty much since COVID was really in full swing. I just started playing guitar more. And I thought, well, if work's going to thin out, now's the perfect time for me to do renovations to my studio. So I actually packed up my main studio all in boxes and shoved it in the corner of an extra room and a couple of other storage areas around the house, and started doing renovations. And then, but I did all that. I did all the demo and started putting up the drywall and all that stuff before I realized what the pandemic was going to do to supply lines and to the labor pool.
Yeah.
So I've been absolutely screwed on that. I was just like, oh my God, like I thought I had the budget to do this, but now it costs us, lumber and drywall and everything has shot through the friggin' roof. It's so I said, I got a little alcove, a little practice alcove that I've had for a while where I can just sit and play guitar. And so I just set up a laptop there with a smaller interface and set up a bunch of my guitar gear just to be able to record, session guitar for people. And I can do some reamping as well. I've done some I reamped the new Internal Suffering album. If you listen to that, I did the reamping for that there. Reampings where, people capture a direct signal when they're originally recording their guitars. It's just like a copy of what's coming out of the guitar jack. It doesn't sound like anything. I mean, before you plug a guitar into an amp, if you tried to listen to it, it's just like, ganky, it sounds like nothing.
Yeah.
And if you capture a copy of that on its way to the amp when you're recording guitars originally, then you can change the guitar tone anytime without having to redo the performance, because the performance is there, it's captured. There's an exact copy of what came out of that guitar jack recorded. Right. It sounds crappy on its own, but you send it through any amp and dial in a good tone, and you've got a different guitar tone that you can either add to the tone that was originally used or replace it if it were bad. You decided it was bad when you started mixing. Gotcha. It's like an extra level of safety. And so I do that. That's another service that I provide. And the most recent example is the new Internal Suffering album. But that's a lot of session work, man. I'm playing constantly. Yeah, I got the new Have to Rock to Do and a few others, that are on deck right now, waiting for me to get to them.
So back to the tumor thing. How long did it take you to get back to where you wanted to be at playing or whatever? Or were you
a little over a year?
Wow.
Pretty much what the doctor said, that it could take me up to a year to fully recover was about right. I mean, dude, there were months where I couldn't even walk outside when it was bright.
Okay.
Literally, my eyes would just cross up. I had no strength in my, because they had messed with the orbit of my eye, and I had to rebuild that strength.
Crazy.
And for the longest time, because when they cut you around your eye, that messes up the whole tension of the skin around your eye, which is where your tear duct and all that stuff is.
Yeah.
And they said that one of the results is probably going to have, the tear duct's not going to work properly, the eye's going to drain too quickly, and I'm going to have dry eye. I'll have to, wear an eye patch and put eye drops in. I still put eye drops in time to time, but I don't necessarily have to wear the eye patch anymore, so I usually don't.
So you're good vision now, other than wearing glasses. I wear glasses.
My vision came back so good. I still had a couple little funky spots that were permanent damage was done, but it improved so much in the month after the surgery, where my ophthalmologist that I was going to on the regular was telling me, "No, you're not good to drive. You're not good to drive." And I remember after 3 visits where he said, "No, I still can't approve you to get a license. I can't approve you to get a license." That's all he would say is, "I can't approve you to get a license." I'd say, "What? Can I get a license?" He goes, "No, I can't approve you to get a license." So probably after about the third of those types of visits, I stopped on my way out and turned around and I said, "When do you think about how long before you think I'll be able to drive? And he just looked at me and waved his hands back and forth in like an X pattern, like, no, you're never going to be able to drive again.
Wow.
Never. Your vision will never be good enough for you to drive again. And I was like, really? Because I feel like I can see just fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize I'm doing bad on the test, but, you know, and the test is telling you that my peripheral vision shot, but I feel like I can see in my peripheral vision just fine. I can see if something's coming. Because, no, you know, if you're driving and something comes at you from the side, you won't be able to see it like most people will with their peripheral and be able to stop. You'll just keep right on going because you won't even know it's there. And you'll end up getting in terrible accidents. I can't approve for you to drive. And I was just like, man, I just don't feel like that's right. He goes, well, let me show you. And he says, look right at my eye. Don't deviate. Look right straight at the tip of my nose. I'm going to watch you. Make sure you don't look away. And then he holds his hand up way away and holds up. How many fingers am I holding up? And I just stared right at him. I got it right every single time.
Nice.
And he just stopped and went, wait a minute. Let me do you this other kind of test. And he did this other kind of test with me. And then he just said, well, Mr. Murphy, you are one of those people, or it's kind of rare that you're one of those people that just doesn't test well. But when you do, on these, you know, the A something test, I forget what it's called. But when you do the practical test face to face, you do excellent. And that's rare. These tests usually tell the full story, but some people they don't. And I think you're one of those people. And I go, and then he just looks at me and goes, if you can pass the test, you're good to go. So he signed off on me to get my license.
Hell yeah.
Like literally half hour after he told me that I'd never be able to drive again. You know, so
but
I've been driving ever since.
But you, Mr. James Franklin Murphy, were stubborn and said, listen.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't take no for an answer easy if once I have it in my head something I want to do. That has been both a bane and a benefit, you know, of my personality, you know.
Wow.
It's worked both ways. It's a sword that cuts on both edges, you know what I mean?
So do you have any other, are you doing another solo album?
I would like to do another solo album, and I would also really very much love to do another, you know, death metal type band type album, be it under the name Disincarnate or not. I think I would prefer to wait to see how it came out. If I write a death metal album, either by myself or with some other guys, if it doesn't really sound like it fits the legacy of Disincarnate, I wouldn't want to call it that. But if I can do something that sounds like it could be a follow up to Dreams of a Carrion Time, then most definitely I'll call it Disincarnate.
Which is
obviously
fucking killer fucking album.
Thank you very much.
So yeah,
and, I'm still very proud of that album, and I know that the other guys that are involved in it that are still with us, or Brian and Jason, are also very proud of it, and you know, and like, you know, Tommy Viator, you know, rest in peace. He was very proud of it as well. I know he was. He told me many times that he was very proud of the album we made together, and he should have been. So I'm glad he was.
Fuck yeah. It's gone down in history for sure as a killer fucking death metal album. And you know, me and you talked Friday, I think, or whatever it was. And I mentioned to you recently put a Facebook post up of the like 9 albums, I think, that you were part of. And
9 albums. I have another one in the chamber ready to go of just like some, you know, more extensive like guest appearances and stuff that I did. And that's going to go up, you know, now I think. And
we were talking about how we know you did this stuff, but when you put it up there in your face like that, it's much more visceral, you know. There's another $5 word. You know, it's much more visceral. It's very, you know, as my British friends call it,
That word sounds very expensive.
Or powerful for people like me.
Yeah, but it is. It's very, it has much more power to it. Like, oh,
yes,
man, that's his primary body of work. It is. Those are the albums that I appear on as a primary music. There are other albums that I appear on as a primary music, where I play on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like there's the Cochra stuff. There's 4 different albums I did with Cochra. There's, the Solstice album that I did like 3 or 4 solos on, I think.
Oh, yeah. There's quite a few.
Yeah. There's way more than David. It's way more than 60. It's in the hundreds. Yeah,
that's crazy.
At least a couple hundred or more. Yeah.
Well, I can already tell you this is gonna be a 2-part. I'm about to do this in 2 shows, so that's awesome.
Oh, right on.
This is like by far one of my favorite. This is by far probably my favorite interview so far. It's just amazing, your story, dude, for sure. It's like how you came up, you moved around, you're a military brat like me, and you're the rise and the triumph, tragedy, and just how you snap back out of all of it after your surgery. Fucking amazing, dude. You're definitely a legend in the metal fucking community for sure, man. Around the world.
Thanks. I'm always uncomfortable.
It's just fucking.
I'm always uncomfortable hearing that, but
I know, but still, I gotta tell you, it's the truth. You're a fucking shredder. You've always been a shredder, and like you said, stubborn has been good for you because you haven't accepted defeat at all, and that's awesome. And the other thing is, I'm so happy for you, and especially recently. Once again, congratulations on your new marriage. It's not been that long, so it's just fucking awesome, man. I'm so happy for you guys.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, we figured, we've been together for, at the point that we got married, we had been together for 6 years and living together for 5, or as my grandmother used to say, shacking up.
Right.
For 5 years. Speaking of the fact that you were a military brat, Dave, sprichst du nach Deutsch? Wie viele Jahre haben Sie in Deutschland gelebt?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I did when I was a young kid, because the last time I was in Germany I was 5, and I we lived off base, and I actually had to translate for my parents. Don't ask me how. Little child like that knew German, but I translate it because I guess the other kids around or something. Kids soak it up like a sponge, man. Kids soak it up like a sponge. I would translate from the landlords and the neighbors to my parents, and at 5 years old.
I don't doubt it. Kids are amazing like that. You just pick it up. The first time we lived there, when we were in Heidelberg, I was only like 9, 10, and 11 years old, and I picked it up like a sponge. So I still have that stuff in my brain when we came back when I was 15. And so that time that we lived there, it was through ages 15, 16, and 17, and I picked up so much more. And then just like 2 years later, I was back on tour, with Agent Steel in Germany again, and I kept being able to exercise that muscle. So to this day, I still speak, decent German.
That's pretty.
Sometimes
cool.
I have to stop and think about it in advance before I speak, which is why I stumbled there a little bit. I was just speaking off the cuff, and so I get my tongue gets ahead of my brain a little bit, and so I screw it up, but. If I take my time to think about it, I can communicate very well. I understand, quicker than I can speak. I have to translate. I don't think naturally in German. Like I think in English, so therefore I have to translate. if I've been there for a while, I catch myself starting to think in German.
Right.
The thought occurs to me in German, but
I think you asked me if I still speak German, is what you asked me a few minutes ago. Yeah. It's funny that I knew what you said, but I don't know. It's weird. I used to also living in El Paso, Texas when I was 2. And then, later when I was like 6 or 7 and till I was like 8 or something, I knew Spanish as well, very well. So I actually knew 3 different languages, English, German, and Spanish, but I don't know shit for Spanish or German anymore. It's just, and then I went to Alabama, and that's a whole nother language in Alabama.
In which the phrase "a whole nother" is very.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
But James,
I did retain that skill, to be able to speak a fair amount of German. I understand it very well, but it's perfectly useless in my day-to-day life. Occasionally, I'll run into a German person, like either on vacation or someone who relocated here, and I'll recognize that they speak German. Like I hear someone speaking with a strong German accent, in like Panera Bread or something. When I'm waiting in line to fill up my green tea, and then I just turn and look at them, and I'll be like, and I'll just take them by surprise because they just think they're in Polk County, Florida. Yeah. Land of full, people who don't understand them.
Florida man.
But they're speaking, even if they're speaking English to somebody there, you catch the accent, and then I'll turn to them and be like, "Kommt ihr aus Deutschland oder Schweiz oder Österreich oder was?" And they'll look at me like, "Oh, Österreich."
Don't have a clue what you said.
So do you come from Germany or Switzerland or Austria or what?
Gotcha.
The German speaking countries, and then they'd answer like, "Oh, Austria or Germany or whatever." And then we have a conversation in German, and it's fun. So it's fun for me to connect with people, that I otherwise would have absolutely no reason to talk to.
Right. Yeah.
But it lets me practice that otherwise completely useless skill.
Right. Well, James, fuck, this has been a great honestly, this has been 3 hours total. Amazing.
Wow,
awesome.
Yeah.
It's fucking great, man. I appreciate it, man. And I'll do 2 different shows, and then I'll put the whole thing on YouTube for listening later. That'll be fucking awesome.
Well, I literally just uploaded the second 9-frame graphic guest appearances. It's guest appearances part 1. I don't even know how many parts this is going to have.
Wow.
So guest appearances part 1 just went live on my Facebook feed.
Okay. Oh, killer. I got to check that shit out. Fuck yeah, man. And, fucking thanks, man. I don't know what else to say. It's fucking awesome. Amazing,
it's been really
story.
A lot of fun, man. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great just to have a conversation with you, talking about all this old stuff.
Yeah,
and without any negative baggage attached to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's all fun.
Yeah, I don't like doing the negative stuff. I like staying positive.
Yeah,
we need more of that.
Awesome,
we need more of that shit.
Yeah, well, I very much like that these days and have been for many years.
Yes. Hell yeah, brother. I am looking forward to more shit. I can't wait to play a lot of this shit. That's why I got to do 2 parts, because I have to play music in between and before and after. So hell yes. And I hope to see you soon, man. Got anything planned for doing anything live at all before I let you go?
Nothing currently. I was really hoping that we would reprise the Living Monstrosity thing.
Yeah.
But they just, they really, they got together with Rick to doing the Left to Die thing, and it just, I don't. That seems to really take off, and they're doing a lot of touring behind that and all of that. So that and all of those guys, all the rest of the guys are. Their dance card is full, as they say.
Yeah. Death to all and Left to Die.
Yeah. And, Death to All, Left to Die. Plus, Terry has Obituary and like Denial Fiend and whatever else he's doing, Master, whatever they're all doing, there's various people involved in that are doing all kinds of things. So, Gus has Gruesome and his normal everyday musician activities where he's gigging all the time, that guy. And, so everyone's just really, really busy and hey, I didn't really bring my, I hate to keep bringing this up. It sucks, I do believe that people for the most part, the most part they enjoyed that. The Living Monstrosity
they did.
Playing Spiritual Healing.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that those guys all performed so well. They're all so, seasoned live players that have been steady playing all these past 16 years that I haven't been, So I did not really, I relearned the songs and I relearned them fast. They were easy for me to relearn. But what I had forgotten in the intervening 16 years is that when you're going to play live, you do a professional job. You don't just practice to the point that you've learned the songs. You practice to the point that you can't fuck them up. That nothing can distract you. Any distraction can happen and your hands just keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I did not practice to that point. I wish that I had.
Well, I think you're selling yourself short. Everybody there enjoyed it, and it was great to see you on stage again. So that's my take and a bunch of other people's take for sure, man. It was killer.
Well, that's awesome. Well, for about a year after those shows, I played those songs. 5 nights a week, I would play through those songs, and I had them down so well. I had them down beyond that, like anything could have happened. The house could have fallen down around me, and I would just not even miss a note. But after a year, you get bored doing that, and I stopped.
Right.
And so if they wanted to do it again, I would want to take the time to properly prepare. Not that I didn't have proper time this first time we did it. I absolutely did. I just didn't take advantage of it because I thought, I've relearned the songs already. I don't need to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm good. I wasn't good. But so I had plenty of time. I just didn't take proper advantage of it. So I would, if we did it again, I would take proper advantage of the time to prepare. Hey, I'd love to do it if we did it again. If not, if they just got other plans, if they just don't feel like doing it again, that's cool too. I'm ultimately going to do, some more of my own thing. It's a natural extension of me getting back more into playing. I was such a producer, such a behind the glass guy for 20 straight years, man, that, I was playing on albums as a guest, but that's the only time I would play. Fortunately, I got asked to play or needed to play in the studio for various reasons often enough. And I kept my chops up. I kept my game, but I didn't play enough to develop all kinds of new ideas and new skills and improve and get build a new repertoire, but now I am. I'm playing 4 or 5 hours a night nowadays.
Oh, that's fucking killer.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully I get to see you up on stage again, and hopefully this Disincarnate or whatever you come up with is soon. I'm sure everybody would love to hear it. And, I got to
do it soon just because, time is not,
we're not getting any younger here.
Yeah. All of us OGs are either, we gotta do it soon or not at all.
That's true. You can't, what's the old saying? If you're going to do it, get it done.
I already have some old man problems.
Me too.
At least I fear them at any rate. I feared with one of my big fears doing the Living Monstrosity shows, because I was afraid that I was going to have to take a piss in the middle of the gig. Why do I have to? I don't want to drink too much water. So because I was so afraid of that, I was drinking so little water. I drank water. I drank water on stage, and I would take little baby sips because I did not want to have the experience be ruined by being miserable from having to piss.
Right, I got
and
you.
As you know from the brass mugs, they do not have a toilet backstage. So there was no taking it quickly, in between songs or any of that shit,
Nah.
So I ended up getting mildly dehydrated, and and it left me a little. I got a little bit dizzy on the gig. You know.
Oh damn.
Yeah, it's no big deal. You know, I got to be smarter. You know, it was my first time back on stage after 16 years.
Yeah, and like I said, it's amazing.
A whole bunch of lessons that I needed to relearn. You know, the hard way.
Well, you might have known that you messed something up, but I don't think the people.
I mean, I think that there were both types. I think there were mistakes that were probably I was the only one that noticed, and I was maybe a little too hard on myself mentally for it.
Yeah.
But there were also definitely big old clams that anybody would have spotted if they were paying half a lick of attention. And certainly the guys in the band who, you know, Matt, Terry, Gus, those guys were phenomenal, man. Just phenomenal. They carried it. They carried the gig because I certainly wasn't carrying it. I was getting my licks in, you know, doing things, you know, but you know that I think made most people have a good time, but I was messing up enough that I was very self-conscious of it. You know, I still want to think about, like, I can't watch the videos. I can't watch them. As soon as it starts getting near where I know I fucked up at, I just can't even look at it. I can't watch. I got to turn it on.
I got you. What?
Yeah.
Well, James.
Hopefully we'll do some of that again.
Let me say, please tell your family I said hello. I don't know if they'll remember me, but I visited you plenty of times too. At the old house, at the apartment. Remember the time when I was ready to sell some albums because I needed money? So I brought my collection to your house and you bought half of them. I'm kicking myself to this day for that. Damn it.
And you know, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't keep them.
Oh, man.
I actually did keep them all the way until I was in Testament. And actually, you know what? I did. One of the things that I got back, Dave, was my record collection.
Wow.
Almost intact. I did get that back because I had left that in a place that I stayed temporarily after I lost my main apartment and studio. And among the things that I had managed to take over there was my record collection. And it was at a place run by the guy who ran Testament's rehearsal facility. So he locked that stuff in a room for me. And he ultimately, once I was recovered enough and I was staying at my sister's house, he shipped it to me at my sister's house. It showed up in a big old semi truck. And I had to pay the fee, but you know, I was happy to do that to get my stuff. So I actually have almost all my records that I had out in California. So if I took it with me to California, then I probably still have it now to this day. So you'd have to tell me what you had.
I fucking can't remember. I had a lot of original pressings from the 80s and some of the crazy rare shit. And I just remember.
You don't even want to. You wouldn't even be able to wrap your head around the amazing record collection I had of rare first pressing European stuff that I bought in Europe because I was living there in Frankfurt. And when we left, here's the thing. You may remember this from being an Army brat. When you leave wherever your father's been stationed and you go somewhere else, the Army comes in, sends in movers. They pack up all your shit and they move it. It doesn't cost you a damn thing.
Yep.
You just about don't have to lift a finger.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that was the case with us. It was going to cost my father nothing for me to ship my records back to the States. But he made an arbitrary decision that I wasn't going to be. That's too much shit to take back. Sell those records. You either sell those records, or I'm going to take them and put them out. Give them away on base where I work through the I's and P's there. So you either sell them or I'm gonna deal with them. I was like, why can't they just don't back talk me? I made my decision. He goes, I don't remember that. I have no memory of that. It was because it was an arbitrary decision that he didn't even put any thought into, but he enforced it with an iron fist. Yeah. So I had to sell so many records, including all my original first pressing, amazing, mint, immaculate copies of all those early French heavy metal bands that were one of the initial reasons why me and Chuck and Bill and Terry
yeah
had a connection when we first talked, because we all
me
all appreciated these bands. Yeah, there you go.
And that's how
there you go.
Me and Terry connected, because my buddy in Alabama, he was a record collector, and he was doing tape trading and writing back and forth to Terry. That's how. And then when I was moving to Florida, he goes, you got this band Sabotage you like is from there. This band Nasty Savage you like is from there. And this band Death and Mask and blah, 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 Executioner. And I didn't know any of the death metal shit. I only knew Sabotage and Nasty Savage before I moved here. But he said, you got to find this band Death, Terry. And that ironically was the first person I met was Terry, because I sought out. Anyways.
No, you sought out?
Yeah, I sought out a Death show. I saw a flyer at, I think, Vinyl Fever. And
right. Oh, yeah. Vinyl Fever, yeah.
And then went there. And another thing, back when you used to work at Aces, and other people that worked at Aces, it was cool. I loved going in Aces because I was always wanting to be the guy around my friends that had the new shit. I wanted to have the new shit first. I wanted to play it for my friends, and so they can enjoy it. And I remember going to Aces, and that's one thing was cool about Aces is like everybody there would let me listen to something new. And if I saw something that was new, that they would let me listen to it before I bought it, because they knew that if I liked it, I'd just buy it. I spent my money on this shit. And it was that was one cool thing about Aces, is that you could do that. And well, I could do that. I don't know about everybody, but I think they did it for
certain, not necessarily everyone, but
people that they knew that were passionate about it and knew that would follow through with buying it. But
speaking of, since you mentioned Sabotage and Nasty Savage, and I've had the opportunity to tell David Austin this, but I unfortunately never got the opportunity to tell Chris Oliva this. You can, to this day, if you know what to listen for, you can hear on every album I ever recorded, with the possible exception of Spiritual Healing, because I didn't use a bar at all on Spiritual Healing. The bar was not even in my guitar, so there was no whammy bar stuff at all. I started using it on every other recording, starting with Cause of Death, but I always played it. And two of my biggest influences as a lead guitar player, especially with regard to doing cool stuff with the bar and with like octave runs, octave slides, was Dave Austin and Chris Oliva.
Fuck,
and you can, if you know what to listen for, you can hear it in my playing to this day.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Like I said, I fortunately, Dave is with us, and I was able, some years ago now, to be able to tell him that, and to go, but then I wish I would have been able to tell Chris Oliva.
Yeah.
Obviously a shame.
I talk to David at least probably once a week, at least, if not more sometimes.
Oh, cool.
And he's a good dude, and I can't wait to hear his solo project. It's fucking gonna be amazing.
Me and Dave are friends on Facebook these days, and we talk a little bit from time to time. We had a big long conversation several years back, where I was able to tell him, about that, him being an influence on me. I think he was surprised and glad to hear it. I think he was pleased to learn that. But I think anyway.
I'm sure I'm sure he loved it, and he's floored by it as well. So,
that would be cool. But I'm just, I was happy to be able to let him know, because obviously I can't leave him know. But
right.
It's just I think Dave. I mean, I don't know how much. I think David might have got a little disappointed in me, because he had asked me to play on that thing he did, I think, for Curtis a while back.
Oh, no, it was that one was it was for the money went to iPads for kids or something.
Okay, yeah, he had asked me to play on it, and I was originally billed as one of the people that was going to be playing on it. but I just didn't have time to do it. It was something that I was obviously donating, and
yes,
I had so much work that had already paid me that I had to get done on a time schedule, and it all went kind of haywire, and I ended up just not being able to get that him to David quick enough. He ended up having to move forward without me, and I think that I don't think he's mad at me or anything.
No, not at all.
I think I disappointed him. I think I disappointed him. Well, I feel bad about it.
It was called Blood Divisions. Blood Divisions.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I feel bad about staking on that. It was not my intention. It's just that I had too much work with deadlines that it just all piled up and started stepping on each other. And to have taken the time to do the Blood Divisions thing, I would have been pissing off a paying client. And I just,
well, I'm sure he understands. He's not.
I'm sure too. But
David's awesome. He totally is. He gets.
Like I said, I don't think he's mad at me, but I think I disappointed him a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
And I do feel bad about it. But yeah, no, I love that guy. I love his playing, and he was a massive influence on me. All this crazy shit he did with the bar and Arcus Lives, and all that stuff like that. I just remember just standing there and goddamn somewhere in Brandon, just standing right in front of him and watching him do it and going, man, that shit is so fucking cool. What the fuck is he doing there? I'm just watching him until he goes, man, I gotta try shit like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like Chris Oliva, but more freaky,
Yeah.
More wild, because I was already being influenced by Oliva. So I knew what the archetypes were. I knew how to do them. I had figured it out, probably even before I was influenced by Chris Oliva, I knew what an archetype was. But the way that I used them, melodic and doing whole lines and solos and stuff and in riffs with them, that came from Oliva. And then when I started getting really kooky with the bar and doing strange things with them, that came from Austin.
Fuck yeah. We keep going there. I keep saying we're going to end this, but I got another question for you. What actually is your gear of choice? Guitar.
Well, I'm with Comparison Guitars. I have loads of guitars, Dave. I have Fenders, I have Gibsons, I have PRSs. But the guitar company that I have an endorsement deal with, I absolutely love their instruments as well. They're called Comparison. It's Caparison, like C as in car, A, P as in Paul, A, R, I, right. S as in Sam, O, N. Comparison. And they're amazing. And my favorite guitar for them, it's called a TAT, stands for through and through. It's a neck through body. So my Comparison TAT, and it's a little bit customized for me. So that's my guitar of choice when it comes to doing anything in the metal realm for the most part. Although I do sometimes occasionally reach for a different guitar for some of the metal stuff. My primary bitch is that one, the Comparison TAT.
Right.
And, my primary amp for rhythms is a EVH 5150 Mark III, and primary amp head for solos. It changes. I got a few different ones that I use. I don't think I have a primary one for that. I use different stuff.
Gotcha.
I use them like a Friedman preamp for that, and some KSR stuff as well. KSR is really awesome. I use a lot of KSR stuff.
All German to me.
And you know what, Dave? You probably saw it at the gig.
At the Chuck thing.
Yeah, at the Death Show. I still have that old TS10, Ibanez TS10 tube screamer that I bought right after I got back from Germany. I think I bought it in Texas or Louisiana somewhere. And I've used it on every single one of those albums in that 9-panel.
Wow.
Thing. Every single one of them has a tube screamer on it. Every single album in the new 9-panel one, Guest Appearances Part 1, it's on those too. and I've used it from the beginning. There's a picture that I took of Chuck sitting on a stool with his guitar in the control room of Morrisound. He's sitting there on a stool. He's got his guitar, and he's looking over at me. And I took the picture. You can see my Marshall head on the floor, and on the other side of him, and his Randall head. You can see my little rack with like my tuner and stuff in it on top of the head, and you can see a couple pedals on the floor. Way off to the right, you see an orange one. That's Chuck's Boss DS1. That was his distortion pedal. That's what he was playing through. But right underneath his, I think, right foot, you see a green pedal. That's that, you know.
Uh-huh.
I took that photo in 1989 in Morrisound control room, and I still have that same fucking one.
Crazy.
And
Still
I used
using
it on
it?
so many recordings. I still use it to record, not every time, but especially like when I'm going to record some. Like for instance, when I did I did 2 solos on one of the last Gruesome releases, the one where they sort of
homage
to spiritual Twisted Prayers or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I played 2 solos on that. The one where they're paying homage to spiritual healing, and I used that tape streamer because I had used it on spiritual healing, and I just thought that was freaking cool, to play it on that album. So there you go.
Hell yeah. I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think so.
What's your food of choice? No, I'm just joking. We're not going there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to head over to my dad's. I'll let you go and finish up the rest of your evening. Keep your eyes peeled on my feed for these guest appearances ones. Like I said, part 1 just posted a few minutes ago.
Fuck yeah, man. I actually saw it there. All right. Tell Kristen I said hello and the family. And I'm so happy for both of you guys. Awesome, man. And once again,
awesome, brother. Thank you.
Fucking appreciate this. This is fucking awesome. Hell yeah.
All right, sweet, man.
All right, brother.
Yeah, I do not envy you having to edit this monstrosity, but it was very fun to do.
I'm going to be making it a project next weekend. I have plenty of time.
All right, brother.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, James. It's been an awesome fucking time. All right. See ya.